Chapter 1. Qin Yu always felt that he was just an ordinary person and never thought that one day he would do something earth-shattering, until he saw an out-of-control truck rushing to the side of the road, and a panicked child was standing there. Without having time to think about it, Qin Yu pushed the child away with all his strength, and then, the out-of-control truck crashed into him like a cannonball. Then, he felt that his whole body was flying up, and then his consciousness fell into the boundless darkness. When Qin Yu woke up again, he found himself lying in a room with large glass windows and full of sunlight. Looking at the furnishings in the room, Qin Yu felt that it was a bit European or British style, and it had a very retro feel. Obviously, this is not a hospital. He opened his slightly dazed eyes, blinked, and tried hard to recall what had just happened. Just then, a little girl shouted in English, "Dad, Mom, he's awake, he's awake." There was some joy in this nervous voice. "Let me go. Am I at someone else's house? I was obviously knocked away just now. Why didn't anyone take me to the hospital?" Before Qin Yu could speak, he heard a series of questions from the little girl next to him. "Hello, what's your name? Do you still remember what happened to you? Where is your home?" Since Qin Yu was originally highly myopic, he subconsciously wanted to reach for his glasses, but after searching for a long time, he couldn't find them. He rubbed his eyes, glanced at the little girl next to him, and found that he could see clearly. The little girl's delicate skin, long eyelashes, bright eyes. Qin Yu could see it all clearly. It turns out that the world can be so clear, and this experience is simply so refreshing. Qin Yu thought to himself, could it be that after being hit by a car, his myopia was unexpectedly cured? I heard that it costs tens of thousands to make a femtosecond. Tisk, you've made a profit. He came back to his senses and looked at the little girl in front of him. At this time, he realized that the little girl looked familiar, as if he had seen it in some movie. Qin Yu shook his head again to confirm that he was awake, and then said with some confusion, "Are you that one?" Maybe it was because he had just woken up and his brain was a little confused. He couldn't remember the name for a while. He hummed in his mouth. The name was on his lips, but he couldn't remember what it was. The little girl frowned and looked at Qin Yu and said, "Do you know me?" The cute little girl in front of me has brown hair, beautiful eyes, and a faint smile. Qin Yu's thoughts were racing, and he finally remembered. Isn't this the little girl in the Harry Potter series of movies? Qin Yu had watched it many times with a female friend before. He was very confused at the beginning. Isn't Harry Potter just a fairy tale? It just has a magical cloak. Then, the main line of the story is that the protagonists go on adventures to fight monsters together. However, as he learned more about the story, he discovered that it was actually a very warm story about growing up, cruelty yet warm. Hermione Granger? Qin Yu finally remembered the name of this girl with curly hair. When Qin Yu said Hermione's name, the other party's neck shrank and her eyes almost fell out of her head. She was so surprised. Of course, in Qin Yu's opinion, she looks very cute like this. Qin Yu realized that what he said was a bit inappropriate, so he quickly changed the subject and said, "Why am I here?" After saying this, Qin Yu stopped again. Only now did he realize that he had been speaking in English from the beginning, but he was a little confused and didn't react. There are so many unexpected gains from this car accident. It actually gave my mouth a translation function. In this case, there should be no language barrier when the two of them communicate. Advertisement. At this time, Hermione looked about 10 years old. Qin Yu was actually more familiar with her appearance when she grew up, so he didn't recognize her immediately. After hearing Qin Yu's question, Hermione blinked her big eyes, thought about the wording, and said slowly and seriously, "It's like this. A few days ago, you suddenly appeared on the street in front and was accidentally hit by my father's car." Hermione emphasized her tone when she said she was accidentally. "Dad has already taken you to the hospital for examination. There is nothing wrong with your head or body, but you kept sleeping and didn't wake up, and we couldn't find your family. Dad felt he was responsible, so he brought you back. Fortunately, you finally woke up." After saying this, the little girl breathed a sigh of relief. After listening to her words, Qin Yu frowned. The matter seemed to be beyond his understanding, because he didn't think that he would be unscathed after being hit by a large truck at such a fast speed. But the fact is that he didn't feel that he was injured. "What's wrong with you? Are you feeling uncomfortable somewhere?" Hermione asked with concern after seeing that he didn't speak for a long time. As she said this, she reached out and touched Qin Yu's head to see if he had a fever. Then, when she saw that Qin Yu had no reaction, she waved her hands in front of his eyes. Qin Yu reached out and helplessly pulled away Hermione's little hand. He wanted to say, "I'm normal and not blind." He didn't know this until he made a move. Once he did, he was shocked. Why was his hand so small? Why did my hand become like this? Qin Yu shouted in surprise. After saying this, he jumped out of bed in a hurry. Then, seeing a mirror on the table, he hurriedly picked it up and looked at it. Looking at the childish face in the mirror that was somewhat similar to his own when he was a child, Qin Yu was shocked and speechless. He felt like there were 10,000 divine beasts roaring through his heart now. My age and voice have changed. Is this the legendary time travel? So is my soul traveling through time? Or has my body become smaller and traveled through time? Who can tell me what is going on? Qin Yu couldn't think of a reason for this, so he put the mirror on the table again in a daze. Seeing that he seemed to have suddenly become stupid, Hermione, who was standing next to her, was frightened and felt that she was really unsure. So she hurried downstairs and shouted, "Dad, Mom, why haven't you come up yet?" Qin Yu ignored little Hermione, who left, but sat down on the bed in a daze. There is Hermione in this world. Does that mean there is magic? So is this world still the same as my original world? At this moment, a pleasant voice sounded in his mind. Ding! It is detected that the host is emotionally stable and in good condition, and the system is automatically activated. Stable? Stable. Qin Yu replied subconsciously. However, he was immediately stunned and his heart skipped a beat. System? Is the voice just now the legendary system? However, the voice ignored him and continued, Ding! Hello, host. Welcome to the magical world. This is a god-level selection system. There are 2 initial options for you to choose from. Next, please make your choice as soon as possible to complete the formal binding of the system. 1. Become a muggle, ordinary person, and receive a reward of 10 million pounds. 2. Possess the power of the Obscurus and become a wizard. Note: if you choose this option, the system will guide you to eliminate the negative effects of the Obscurus. After listening to the system sound, Qin Yu felt a little excited. After all, the god of destiny did not abandon him and got him a system by his side. So, which one should I choose between these 2 options? He was a little confused for a while. Dimensional wall. Note 1. Muggles are ordinary people who cannot use magic. There are also people like squibs, who refer to the descendants of wizards who cannot use magic. Note 2. The Obscurus power, an uncontrollable and powerful dark force, comes from Rowling's Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, and is also in the same worldview as Harry Potter. Chapter 2. Ding. Host, time is limited. Please make your choice as soon as possible. 1. Becoming a muggle. 2. Possessing the power of Obscurus. The system probably saw that Qin Yu didn't respond for a long time, so it repeated what it said before. Qin Yu listened, and after some thinking, he chose the second option. Money is of course a good thing, but the attraction of magic is obviously not comparable to money, even if it is 10 million pounds. In his mind, this Obscurus appeared in the Harry Potter spin-off movie, Fantastic Beasts, and Where to Find Them, and was not mentioned during the Harry Potter period. Because the generation of this dangerous power mostly stems from the twisted psychology of young wizards who were oppressed by muggles in the early days, there are exceptions. When the magic world and the muggle world are separated in an orderly manner, the environment for young wizards to grow up will be much better. Obscurus lost the soil from which it was born, and therefore almost disappeared during the Harry Potter period. It is understandable that it was not mentioned. And because this kind of power is powerful and easy to lose control, those who possess the power of Obscurus rarely live long. However, since the system says that it can guide and eliminate the negative effects of Obscurus, then I will go to this magical world to try my luck. Otherwise, if I become an ordinary rich muggle, wouldn't my journey through time travel be in vain? Ding. The host completes the initial selection, and the system starts binding. 3, 2, 1. Binding successful. As the system sounded, Qin Yu suddenly felt an indescribable force slowly growing out of his body, and this power made him feel both powerful and dangerous. Since then, Qin Yu has become a wizard with the power of Obscurus. This made him a little happy and excited. Just now, little Hermione saw Qin Yu suddenly acting stupid, so she hurried downstairs and asked her parents for help. After Hermione's father came up, he asked Qin Yu to lie down quickly and checked him. Although Mr. Granger is a dentist, he is familiar with some common reactions to brain surgery. He shined a flashlight commonly used by surgeons into Qin Yu's eyes to check his pupil reaction, then probed his forehead and asked about Qin Yu's feelings. Qin Yu was very cooperative throughout the process. After all, Mr. Granger was Hermione's father, and he seemed to be a very kind and enthusiastic person. After doing some examinations, Mr. Granger said in a relaxed tone, "Everything about you is normal. Well, except for being a little hungry," because when he spoke, Qin Yu's stomach growled. This scene made little Hermione laugh. She smiled and said to Qin Yu, I'm going to get you my favorite cookies. I'm sure you will like the taste. After the little girl said this, she went downstairs to look for her cookie box and soon came up with cookies. Here you go. You can eat them all. Little Hermione said generously, although she was a little reluctant to part with them. Qin Yu was indeed hungry. He took the box of biscuits, thanked him, and started to eat them. At some point, Mrs. Granger had gone downstairs and brought up a glass of milk and handed it to Qin Yu, so that he would not choke after devouring it. After watching Qin Yu eat several biscuits and finally slowing down, Mr. Granger asked in a gentle tone, Little boy, what is your name? Where do you live? After hearing this, Qin Yu thought for a while and said, I only remember that my name is Qin Yu. As for where I live, I can't remember it. Note, the name Qin Yu was not chosen casually. It has a certain purpose, which will be mentioned later. Well, then, there are two spelling orders for Chinese names, either Qiuzhong or Yao Ming, but the author prefers the latter, and Westerners generally don't use the full name, and they just call it Qin when they are familiar with it. When he said this, he still looked pitiful. There is no way. I am a black man in this world, and I can't tell where I am a monk. Advertisement Hermione's mother saw Qin Yu's sad look, and she immediately felt pity for him. Then, she said to her husband with some worry, Did little Qin Yu lose his memory? Should we go to the hospital to check with Dr. Allen? Is there any hidden damage to his brain? Well, I would have made this suggestion if you didn't tell me. Mr. Granger paused, turned to Qin Yu, and continued, I just forgot to introduce myself. My name is David Granger. This is my wife Jenny Granger. Standing next to me is my daughter. Her name is Hermione. I accidentally bumped into you on the street that day. I am really sorry. I will make an appointment with a professional brain doctor for you. Do a comprehensive inspection, and I will definitely take responsibility if there is any problem. Qin Yu quickly waved his hand and said, It doesn't matter. I probably got hit because I suddenly ran out of the road that day. I'm fine now. I guess I can remember what happened before after a few days of rest. Qin Yu kept sighing in his heart. What kind of bad luck did he have? Being hit one after another. This life is too miserable, and then he thought, now that I have magic, let's see who dares to hit me again in the future. Since you can't remember where your home is for the time being, you can stay at our house first, and we will help you find your family slowly, Mrs. Granger said softly. She actually liked this little boy with an oriental face, and she had always wanted to have another son. The appearance of Qin Yu made Mrs. Granger feel that this was probably God's arrangement, or, in the words of the Orientals, fate. After chatting with Qin Yu and seeing that he was in good condition, the Grangers felt more relieved and went downstairs together. Hermione stayed behind. She had too many questions about the child. After her parents left, little Hermione stared at Qin Yu and asked, How old are you? You should be about the same age as me. Why did you say my name so quickly? You also went to our school? Why haven't I seen you? There aren't many schools around here. It seems. I've never seen you before. Never mind. I don't have time to talk to others anyway. She said so much self-consciously. At the end, her voice gradually became lower and her expression became a little depressed. It was obvious that her life at school was not very satisfactory. Age is just a number. As for school, I also forgot where I went to school. However, although I have lost part of my memory, I have not forgotten the knowledge I learned. I dare to bet you that I know as much as you do. Qin Yu also blinked and looked at this cute girl. He avoided talking about Hermione's questions just now because the more he explained, the more confusing he became. Hermione looked into Qin Yu's eyes and said arrogantly, Really? We can compare when we have a chance in the future. Qin Yu thought to himself, this little girl's determination to win has really been strong since she was a child. However, he also successfully changed the topic. In this way, Qin Yu stayed at Granger's house. The next day, Mr. Granger took Qin Yu to Dr. Allen for a checkup. The result was of course good. As for the recovery of memory, he could only leave it to chance. After staying here for a few days, the Grangers had no intention of letting Qin Yu leave, nor did they ask too much about his past. They felt that when Qin Yu was around, Hermione talked and smiled more than before, which was something that made them happy and gratified. In fact, in the first few days, Hermione was still a little wary of Qin Yu because she felt that this little boy was very extraordinary. Not only do I know a lot, but I also make my parents very happy. But she experienced something today that made her change her mind about Qin Yu. When she walked out of school, her classmates put stickers on her back, which read, You talk so much and shut up. Qin Yu had nothing to do at home, so he went out for a walk and happened to pass by Hermione's school. Then he saw Hermione walking out of school crying, and also saw the note on her back. Who did it? Qin Yu tore off the note and asked with a frown. Hermione cried and looked at several female classmates at the school gate. Those classmates were still pointing in Hermione's direction, sticking out their tongues and making faces. Qin Yu feels that although he has the body of a child now, he still has the mentality of an adult in his heart. Even a grown man cannot see the same things as a kid. But when he saw the tears on little Hermione's face, and then looked at the girls who were laughing at her, he suddenly felt a senseless anger in his heart, and it shot up. He asked Hermione, "If you were asked to do something to them now, what would you do?" Hermione said casually, "Let them hang on the tree next to them, and they won't be able to get down." Qin Yu nodded. This wish was not too much. His heart moved inexplicably, and with a glance, he saw those students flying up from the ground, their clothes hanging on the branches of the big tree next to them. These girls suddenly suffered such a change, and all of them were so frightened that they screamed. Chapter 3. Looking at the elementary school students hanging on the tree, Qin Yu was actually a little stunned. There seemed to be a voice in his heart telling him how to do it, and he had that idea. Unexpectedly, my dream came true. Is this the effect of thoughts stimulating magic? Qin Yu thought so in his heart. Little Hermione looked at this scene with some horror. She murmured, "When did my wish come true so well?" However, she turned to look at Qin Yu and noticed the thoughtful expression on his face. Could it be that he did it? As if she thought of something, Hermione said, "Run." Then he pulled Qin Yu and ran towards home. After running a long distance and losing sight of the school gate, Hermione finally slowed down and asked Qin Yu curiously, "Did you make them fly?" Qin Yu felt that there was no need to hide his identity as a wizard from Hermione. After all, she would know it sooner or later. So, he nodded bluntly and replied, "Yes, I asked them to go up." Hermione immediately covered her mouth that was open in surprise. Then, she looked around and saw that no one was around, and whispered, "Don't you know? The Ministry of Magic has regulations that prohibit the use of magic on muggles at will." Note: set change warning. At this time, Hermione already knew something about the magical world and had read some relevant information, because there were specialized clerks from the Ministry of Magic who had come into contact with young wizards like them. From this point of view, this world is somewhat different from the magical world of Harry Potter that Qin Yu knows. Of course, Qin Yu had already discovered that Hermione was secretly reading books on magic. Qin Yu listened to the little girl's words, smiled and said, "Don't worry, no one knows anyway, and no one has told me about this regulation of the Ministry of Magic." "But I just told you," little Hermione said stubbornly. "Oh, you are indeed a good boy." Hearing this, Qin Yu couldn't help but rub the little girl's brown curly hair. "Aren't you a child too? Why are you talking like an adult?" Little Hermione tidied her hair that was messed up by Qin Yu, dissatisfied. "Then what do you think? Let them hang on the tree to relieve their anger. Are you happy?" Qin Yu said in a coaxing way. "Of course I am relieved to see them being punished," little Hermione said, paused, and then added, "However, as a wizard, you should not bully muggles at will. This is not good." "Why is it bad?" Qin Yu raised his eyebrows and said, Because this is the rule." Little Hermione couldn't explain why. Seeing the serious look on her face, Qin Yu stopped teasing her, rubbed her head again and said, "Let's go home for dinner." Along the way, little Hermione couldn't help but talk to Qin Yu, like a little chatterbox. "Why did you get hit by my dad's car since you know magic?" The little girl suddenly thought of this. Qin Yu curled his lips and said, "I guess I didn't have this ability at that time. The magic power was an unexpected gain after the car accident. It can also be regarded as God's compensation for me." Hermione thought that sounded really incredible. However, since Qin Yu couldn't explain clearly, she didn't worry about it, and then she said excitedly, "Let me tell you secretly, I am actually also a wizard, and I will go to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry if I have the opportunity in the future. But I have to wait until next year because my birthday is September 19th. Don't you know that I have always wanted to find someone like me? But I didn't expect that the first person of my age I saw who could do magic was you." Note: the admission age of Hogwarts is 11 years old, and the school starts on September 1st, so Hermione can only go to school when she is 12 years old. After Hermione finished speaking, looking at Qin Yu's calm expression, she asked in confusion, "Why aren't you surprised at all?" "Should I be surprised? In fact, when you mentioned the regulations of the Ministry of Magic, I knew you were a little wizard." A faint smile appeared on Qin Yu's lips. "Oh, it turns out I let it slip. I was anxious just now. You really can't use magic in front of muggles at will, you know?" The little girl warned again solemnly. "Okay, My dear disciplinary committee member. Then we can go home. I can already smell the aroma of Aunt Jenny's stewed beef. Qin Yu spread his hands and said, Advertisement, Gulu. Little Hermione couldn't help but swallow her saliva, and then said seriously, It's good that you understand the seriousness of the matter. Okay, let's go home. After saying this, the little girl also sniffed the aroma of stew floating in the air, and then eagerly took Qin Yu's hand and entered the house. Hermione, what makes you so happy? Mrs. Granger asked curiously during the meal. Well, it's a secret, I can't tell you. As little Hermione said this, she looked at Qin Yu and smiled at him. Well, it seems that our little Hermione has grown up and has started to have little secrets, Mr. Granger teased. Dad, didn't you also say that everyone has the right to privacy? I am exercising my rights legitimately, Hermione said seriously. Yeah, you're right. We promise not to invade your privacy, Mr. Granger said with a smile. Seeing Hermione's happy look and the happy family atmosphere of the Granger family, Qin Yu couldn't help but feel a little emotional, wondering if he could ever see his family in another world. However, thinking about these things is in vain. He needs to live well in this world now. Hermione looked at the boy beside her and felt that he suddenly became a little melancholy. She was a little curious about what Qin Yu was thinking at this time. Oh, Hermione, if you don't eat the last piece of beef, I will eat it, Qin Yu said loudly. Hermione saw that his melancholic aura had disappeared without knowing when, and there was a slight smile on the corner of his mouth. No, I want to eat. I didn't eat much just now, little Hermione said dissatisfied. Seeing the way she was protecting the food, the Grangers and Qin Yu both laughed. At night, Qin Yu was lying on the bed in the attic, having trouble falling asleep. The power in him today made him inexplicably worried. In fact, he has been able to feel it for a long time. When sleeping, the force will slowly move around his body. Sometimes he feels like there is a dragon in his body, trying to penetrate every part of his body. Every day wake up in the morning feeling full of energy. This power has been stored for too long, and it will explode one day. He had an inexplicable premonition. However, the system seems to have forgotten and has not yet come forward to guide him on how to eliminate hidden dangers. The next day, the weekend. In order to give their children a pleasant rest day, the Grangers took Hermione and Qin Yu to the largest zoo in the area. Hermione loved coming to the zoo because she always felt that animals were easier to get along with than people, and at least they wouldn't give her nicknames. This made Qin Yu feel a little sorry for this little girl. Living as an other in the Muggle world was indeed an unpleasant thing. Qin Yu was a little repelled by coming to the zoo. In his previous life, he was allergic to animal fur, so he always avoided cats and dogs when he saw them. However, he thought that now that he had traveled through time, his body might not be allergic, so at Hermione's request, he gave in. I just want to test whether my body is still sensitive, and I am definitely not overcome by the cute appearance of the little girl. Qin Yu thought so in his heart. The family drove off and soon arrived at the zoo and started playing. However, when Qin Yu and Hermione walked to the door of the crawling hall, they suddenly heard a commotion inside, with many people screaming loudly and running out. Immediately afterwards, they saw a large python with colorful patterns crawling out of it. Dimensional wall. I believe you can see that for the needs of the plot, the author has made certain changes to the original settings, and some timelines have also been slightly changed. Please do not get too entangled in this aspect. Let me reiterate, if you have not seen many original books or movies, or have never seen them, it will not affect your reading of this book. This book has a lot of original plots. Of course, the content in the original book will also be annotated in detail. If you have any unclear questions, you can leave a message to discuss. Chapter 4. Looking at the big python and the panicked crowd, Qin Yu was a little stunned. It can't be such a coincidence. This python looks so familiar. It can't be the one released by Harry Potter? Hee, I just came to the zoo, and you just forced me to walk through the plot? Qin Yu complained crazily in his heart. Besides, shouldn't Harry be the one to clean up this mess? Hermione next to her had a pale face, and her eyes were full of fear. She subconsciously looked at Qin Yu. Qin, what do you think we should do? Can you control it with magic power? Qin Yu knew that this python just wanted to be free and had no intention of hurting anyone. There was no need to panic, of course, provided no one attacked it. How can I control it, unless I can speak snake language, so that I can negotiate with it? Qin Yu said with a shrug. Snake language is a profound knowledge. How can it be learned easily? Hermione said helplessly. She didn't know why she asked Qin Yu just now. How could he possibly deal with such a big python when he was only slightly older than her? Just when Qin Yu was thinking about how to drive away the python, the long-lost system sound in his mind sounded, ding. Dear host, there is a major commotion around you. Please make the following choices. 1. Leave quickly and reward an owl. 2. Drive away pythons and reward snake language proficiency. Qin Yu secretly thought that this system could still be useful at critical moments. He chose the second option without thinking. Ding. The host chose to drive away the python. Your courage deserves encouragement. The reward will be issued in advance. I hope you can use your ability to help more helpless people. At this time, someone had already picked up tools such as wooden sticks and mops to attack the python. The python became more ferocious, raised its head, and stared at those malicious humans with the unique cold eyes of reptiles. I really do have the potential of a crow's mouth, Qin Yu muttered to himself. He moved his neck joints and then said to Hermione, You hide first and leave this big guy to me. As he spoke, he strode up to the python. The snake language ability he had just acquired seemed to have become his instinct. Qin Yu automatically transformed into snake language when he opened his mouth. Hey, Big Chongchong, can you leave quickly? You will scare others. It's obvious that these people want to attack me. Oh, another human being who can communicate. The python's head turned in the direction of Qin Yu and said with some surprise, Obviously, your beautiful patterns have aroused the fear hidden in their genes, so they will behave excessively, and I will stop them, Qin Yu said slowly, and motioned to those holding various weapons. The adults put their things down. Seeing the python being comforted by Qin Yu, a little oriental boy, everyone subconsciously followed his instructions and stepped back and temporarily put down the things in their hands. They are afraid of such beautiful lines? It's really incomprehensible to snakes, the python said with dissatisfaction. Okay, now is not the time to discuss the differences between species. You should stay away from the crowd. There are a lot of wilderness and mountains in the countryside around this city. That is the world where you can live freely. Qin Yu paused and continued. If you don't leave, I can't guarantee that they will catch you and chop you into pieces to make snake soup. Moreover, I wouldn't mind recommending them some mysterious Eastern snake soup recipes. When the python heard this, he shrank his neck and said calmly, I don't want to stay here forever. The visitors to the park had all hid far away, and since snake language was not a language that humans could understand, they naturally had no idea what the little boy had done. All they knew was that after this courageous little boy had a confrontation with the python ran away and quickly disappeared somewhere in the back hill of the zoo. Ba bang bang. Kid, you are so awesome. Can you handle snakes? Are you the animal trainer hired by the zoo? Wow, your performance is amazing. After the python left, everyone applauded Qin Yu and started talking about it. Qin Yu was a little annoyed by being watched by everyone. He quickly took Hermione's little hand and left here to find Mr. and Mrs. Granger, who had just separated from them. Advertisement. After Hermione was pulled away by Qin Yu for a while, she asked curiously, Qin, what did you just say to it? Don't you know how to speak snake language? Qin Yu smiled and said, I just learned it. It can't be that easy. Little Hermione didn't believe it. Maybe this is a bloodline talent. You know, some wizard's bloodline can inherit some special abilities. Qin Yu casually made up a reason. Oh, this is possible. I have read about the influence of bloodline in a book called Introduction to the Origin of Wizards. However, bloodline theory is not a popular theory, Hermione said seriously. Well, I don't like the theory of bloodline either. I appreciate the efforts of the day after tomorrow, Qin Yu replied. Hee, I also think hard work is very important, little Hermione said happily. She is a young wizard who comes from a Muggle family, so she is naturally repelled by theories such as bloodline theory. Now Qin Yu also said that he doesn't like bloodline theory, which makes her very happy. The scene of Qin Yu driving away the python happened to be seen by a little boy coming out of the reptile pavilion. This little boy is about 10 years old, wearing black-rimmed glasses, and a lightning-shaped scar is faintly exposed under the hair on his forehead. He was Harry Potter, who accompanied his aunt and his family to the zoo. Harry intuitively felt that Qin Yu was special. He wanted to come over and say hello to them, and then confide his secrets to them. However, as soon as he took a step forward, he was picked up by his uncle's hands and dragged outside, followed by his expressionless aunt and his fat cousin Dolly. But now the cousin had a full face. He was in a state of panic. His clothes were still wet, and he looked very embarrassed. Qin Yu actually vaguely saw Harry, and he also wanted to go over and help this child who had been bullied by his uncle's family. But there were too many onlookers, and there were Hermione and the Grangers who found them, so he couldn't walk past. Qin Yu secretly thought that there should be another chance in the future. Let's wait until the next time we see him. In addition to gaining the ability to speak snakes during the trip to the zoo, Qin Yu also gained another major benefit. That is, he discovered that he was not allergic to animal hair at all. This gave him the urge to get a dog or a cat. However, even he himself was living in other people's homes, so it would be unreasonable to keep a pet. On the way home, Hermione happily told Qin Yu about her experience in the zoo. In her mouth, lions, bears, tigers, and all the beasts were so cute. At this time, Qin Yu felt worried again. He found that his energy was getting stronger and stronger, and he almost accidentally injured the animals in the zoo a few times just now. When those beasts make his body feel a little scared and nervous, evil thoughts will pop up in his mind, and then some supernatural things will happen. For example, a tiger was injured by a falling stone from a rockery, a bear suddenly hit a tree like crazy, and a lion's tail caught fire inexplicably. Each of these animals was in a very embarrassed state, which was why Hermione found them cute. It seems like this power is getting harder and harder to control, Qin Yu thought to himself. At this moment, he really wanted to curse out all the curse words he knew. I just want to live a good life. Why is it so difficult? Can't the system be more useful to you, you idiot? The emotional fluctuations were conveyed from his eyes, and his eyes were looking at a big tree not far ahead. Suddenly, it seemed as if an invisible big hand grabbed the big tree. Then, the big tree was uprooted and fell on the road with a bang. Chee! A sharp screech of brakes sounded. Mr. Granger finally stopped the car before it hit a tree. Hermione? Mr. and Mrs. Granger looked at their daughter in surprise at the same time. It's not me. Little Hermione, who had been wronged, waved her hands quickly. Qin. Mr. Granger looked at Qin Yu inquiringly and frowned. Then, he saw the helpless expression on Qin Yu's face. So, this is Hermione and your little secret? Mr. Granger asked. Hermione shrugged and said, Not anymore, Dad. Chapter 5. After listening to Hermione's words, Mr. and Mrs. Granger looked at each other and saw worry and helplessness in each other's eyes. It seems that there is another wizard child in the family. In fact, they had already had a hunch in this regard. After all, Hermione was such a person, and they already had experience in this area. When Hermione was very young, the Grangers knew that she was different from others, and many strange things happened to her, which they had been troubled by. Later, a professor from the wizarding world came over and explained all this to them, and said that Hermione would be allowed to study at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry at the right age, that is, when she is 11 years old, and she would be able to learn to control magic by then. When they were at the zoo, the Grangers also vaguely noticed something. At that time, they thought it was Hermione, but now it seems that everything is Qin Yu's fault. However, looking at the big tree that fell to the ground, they knew that Qin Yu's destructive power was obviously stronger than Hermione's. Mr. and Mrs. Granger invariably thought that the age of 11 should come soon, and let these children learn magic quickly, otherwise their hearts would really not be able to withstand the torture. Qin, can you move the tree away? Mr. Granger asked tentatively. Qin Yu shook his head and said nervously, I'm sorry, I can't use my abilities as I want. Well, I should have expected this answer, Mr. Granger said, starting the car and then continued, then we have to go back to the previous intersection and take a detour. So, Mr. Granger drove the car and took a long detour before finally returning home. As for the tree, they had no choice but to leave it to nearby residents. As far as Qin Yu's limited knowledge is concerned, there has always been a regulatory department in the magical world that monitors the wizards and the muggle world. Of course, the most important thing is to prevent wizards from affecting the muggle world in order to maintain a certain order of balance. This department is the legendary Ministry of Magic. Now that the power of Obscurus in his body is out of control, he even uprooted a tree, which will definitely alarm the people from the Ministry of Magic. He didn't know if he would be taken away by people from the Ministry of Magic, so he could only wait anxiously. There are many wizards living here in the Muggle world. This scene in the zoo was seen by a passing wizard. She was Professor McGonagall. When Professor McGonagall was at the zoo, she turned into a tabby cat and walked around observing Harry's family. Dumbledore said that as long as Harry lived with his uncle's family, no Death Eaters would attack Harry. But she would still sneak over occasionally to take a look, and many times she resisted the urge to teach the Dursleys a lesson. This time, in addition to seeing Harry Potter let go of the python, she also accidentally discovered Qin Yu and Hermione. So, she apparat back to the village of Hogsmeade near Hogwarts, entered the school on foot, because apparition was not available in the school, and informed the principal Dumbledore of what she saw today. Harry's ability to speak parslang had already surprised Dumbledore, and knowing that a 10-year-old muggle was so powerful, he felt that this might be another tricky thing. Dumbledore decided to see the child for himself. "Qin, I solved this question before you," Hermione said with a proud look on her face. Ever since Qin Yu came to Granger's house, Hermione's status as a top student was no longer guaranteed. Whether it was math, English, science, or history, Hermione was overwhelmed by Qin. The only thing that made her more confident was he dropped out of art, and it was because Qin Yu's paintings were so bad. "Well, great." Qin Yu praised this little girl absent-mindedly. Yes, he was a little uneasy today. He always felt that something was going to happen, and he had no time to pay attention to the little thoughts of a 10-year-old girl. At this moment, his eyes suddenly opened wide, showing an expression of surprise. Because he saw an old man with a white beard floating outside the window, and the old man was smiling and nodding kindly at him. "Dang dang," Qin Yu shouted a little excitedly. Hermione tilted her little head and asked in confusion, "Dang? Dang what? Qin, what's wrong with you?" Qin Yu turned to ask little Hermione next to him. "Can't you see him?" The little girl looked around blankly and said, "Who do you see?" Qin Yu recognized this as the principal of Hogwarts. Advertisement. After seeing Dumbledore, he finally felt at ease and thought to himself, someone finally came forward to solve the problem, so he no longer had to worry. When Dumbledore walked in from the window and waved slightly, Hermione suddenly yawned and then fell asleep on the table. "Don't worry, Hermione is fine. I just let her sleep for a while so that we can talk more easily," Dumbledore comforted. "I know that you are a kind person, and you will definitely not do anything to Hermione." Qin Yu flattered her slightly. "Oh, you know me?" Dumbledore was a little surprised. "Because Hermione told me about things in the wizarding world, and you are a very famous person in the wizarding world. Anyway, this girl is already asleep, so she won't know if she is a scapegoat." "Well, it seems I can save some self-introduction," Dumbledore said with a smile. Before Qin Yu could say anything, Dumbledore asked straight to the point. "My child, you are not an ordinary person, did you know that?" "I actually know a little bit, but I only know that there is a power in my body that is difficult to control, and some magical supernatural events often occur. This time you are because of that big tree. It just happened. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." Qin Yu looked pitiful when he said this. "What about the big tree?" "Oh, it seems like this is another troublesome matter." Dumbledore showed an unexpected expression when he heard this. "Well, it turns out you don't know," Qin Yu said with some embarrassment. "Haha, kid, you don't need to panic. The purpose of my trip is to help you solve the problems you encounter," Dumbledore said. His eyes became dark. He carefully looked at the little boy with an oriental face in front of him and explored the power in his body. "So that's it. I haven't seen this for a long time." After a while, Dumbledore said in a rather complicated tone. Seeing him like this, Qin Yu was immediately frightened. "Professor Dumbledore, what is the power in my body?" "That is a powerful and dangerous force called Obscurus. This kind of power has not appeared for decades. But don't worry, as long as you provide reasonable guidance, you will be fine," Dumbledore said gently and comfortingly. Qin Yu has been thinking about whether to tell him his story directly. As if he could understand everything, Dumbledore slowly walked to Qin Yu and said, "Child, what happened in the past is past. We should deal with what is happening now and what will happen in the future. Since you have chosen this power must be faced with true courage." Of course, Dumbledore only had a vague premonition, and this premonition told him that the little boy in front of him would be a key and a light, which would bring infinite variables and hope to the future. Qin Yu looked into Dumbledore's eyes. Although the old man's face was full of wrinkles, he was full of energy, and his words gave people a great sense of security, which was more convincing than in the movie. Dumbledore felt that some practical actions were needed to better reassure the boy in front of him. So he said, "In a few days, someone will come to pick you up and take you to Hogwarts. There will be a professor there who will teach you how to release magic. Are you willing?" As expected, the system popped up a choice. Ding, dear host, you are at a crossroads in life. Should you be a lonely adventurer or choose to rely on friends and partners? This is a question that needs to be faced carefully. Please make your choice below. 1. Refuse Dumbledore's invitation to enroll and be rewarded with 100,000 gold galleons and the complete set of Magic from Beginner to Mastery. 2. Accept Dumbledore's invitation to enroll and receive a reward of 1,000 gold galleons. Looking at the reward of 100,000 gold galleons, Qin Yu was still a little excited. After all, with this money and the so-called complete collection of Magic from Beginner to Mastery, he might not be doing badly, at least. With the help of the system, you might be able to level up and fight monsters step by step, reaching the pinnacle of your life. However, Qin Yu felt that one of the purposes of coming to this world was to experience life in the magical world, especially school life, which was an experience not to be missed. So, after thinking for a moment, Qin Yu smiled and bowed slightly to Dumbledore and said, "Thank you, Professor Dumbledore. I am honored to attend Hogwarts School." Ding. The host chooses to accept Dumbledore's admission invitation and will be rewarded with 1,000 gold galleons. Your new adventure story is about to begin. I hope this reward will allow you to purchase enough school supplies. Finally, I wish you a happy study. Success in your studies. This system is quite capable of speaking in some scenes. Qin Yu muttered in his heart. Well, welcome to Hogwarts. Dumbledore said this and took out a letter from his wizard robe. He handed the letter to Qin Yu and said with a smile, I had a hunch in advance that there might be one more new student, so I took the admission notice with me so that I wouldn't have to have an owl deliver it again. After all, there are people who get lost every year. The owl delivered the letter to the wrong place. Qin Yu took the letter, opened it, and saw the admission notice with his name on it. This made him uncontrollably excited. This thing was the dream of many fans in the previous life. He never thought that he, a casual fan, would one day realize their wish. Qin Yu looked at the amiable Dumbledore, sniffed, stretched out his arms, and hugged him. Thank you, Professor Dumbledore. Your arrival makes me feel extremely relieved. Dumbledore responded and touched his head. My child, the future is worth looking forward to. After saying this, Dumbledore disapparated and disappeared. It was as if no one had been here before. The room was very quiet, and little Hermione had a sweet smile on her face, as if she was having a sweet dream. Chapter 6. When Hermione learned that Qin Yu was going to Hogwarts early, not to mention how envious she was, she kept mumbling, Qin, why can you go now and I have to wait? Qin Yu spread his hands and said, as you can see, if I don't release my magic power, I'm afraid I'm going to get into big trouble, and I might be imprisoned in Azkaban. Hermione was frightened when she heard this. She had read many books about the wizarding world, and she had heard about Azkaban. Azkaban is a frightening place in legend. It is said that it is guarded by a very scary monster. That kind of monster can swallow up the positive emotions of human beings, causing people to lose their beautiful emotions and strong beliefs, and thus become trapped in the dark and terrifying world. He died of despair in his memories. Although Hermione wanted to go to Hogwarts early, she now hoped that Qin Yu could go quickly. She didn't want to lose her best friend so far. And the most important thing is, I am already 11 years old this year, Qin Yu said with a shrug. According to the results of Dumbledore's age detection spell, Qin Yu's body is indeed over 11 years old and fully meets the admission requirements of Hogwarts. Oh, well, who prevented my birthday from happening 18 days earlier? Otherwise, I wouldn't have had to wait another year. Little Hermione curled her lips and said. Qin Yu looked at Hermione's disappointed eyes and comforted him. The magical world is not as beautiful as you imagined. There will be many dangers. I will help you explore the way in advance. When you come, I hope you can just study magic. Qin Yu knows that ideals are full, but reality may not be what they are. Too many things have happened to Harry and the others in the past 7 years, some of which he cannot help. After all, he is only an 11-year-old child, and even now he doesn't even know how to spell a serious spell, but he can use magic to run away. Of course, he can't do anything forever. He just hopes that with him in Hogwarts, as few people will die as possible. At least there won't be the tragedy of forgetting to take the wand when opening the door to a stranger, or something else. Avoidable sacrifices. At this time, Hermione was full of fantasies about magic schools. She couldn't understand the meaning of Qin Yu's words yet, but she was just happy that someone could accompany her like this and talk about secrets that only the two of them knew. After listening to Qin Yu's words, the little girl felt much better. She took Qin Yu's hand and said with some reluctance, Then you go first, I will be waiting for you here. You have to write to me often. When the time comes, tell me more about what happened at Hogwarts. Write a letter? Well, okay, I will write to you often. For Qin Yu, who lives in the era of developed internet, writing letters is really too ancient. However, it seems that this is all that can be done now. After all, Muggle technology is still developing, and the era of smartphones that he is familiar with is still nearly 20 years away. Then let me tell you about what I know about the magical world, so that you can have a general understanding before going there. So, little Hermione, the representative of the incarnation class, introduced to Qin Yu other things she knew about the magical world. Of course, They were all common-sense things. In his previous life, Qin Yu only watched the movie a few times with his friends. He didn't know much about the details of the novel and the background of the magic school. What Hermione told him today could be regarded as a popular science for him, giving him some details and giving him more knowledge. Understanding. In the days that followed, Qin Yu often stood by the second-floor window and looked out, wondering who would take him to Hogwarts School. His current mood is both excited and nervous. It is a school that many Ham fans yearn for. It is a life that he has never experienced before, and he does not know what kind of experience he will have. A month passed like this. On a very ordinary morning, the Granger family and Qin Yu were all having breakfast at the dining table, discussing interesting things that had happened recently. Little Hermione was giggling and taking all the poached eggs made by Qin Yu for herself, because this kind of omelette is cooked just right, and she has become fond of this kind of food recently. Dong dong dong. Hearing the knock on the door, Hermione was the first to get up and rush to open the door, because like Qin Yu, she had been waiting for this day. Although it was not her who was going to school, she seemed to be more mature than Qin Yu. Expect. Wow, you are so tall, little Hermione said, raising her neck. Outside the door was a giant with a beard who was more than 3 meters tall. Advertisement, the giant said in a dull voice. Young lady, I am Hagrid from Hogwarts. Is this Qin Yu's residence? Hello, Mr. Hagrid. My name is Hermione. This is indeed Qin Yu's residence. Please come in, little Hermione said politely. Thanks. I saw Hagrid bending over and walking in carefully. Even so, his head hit the door frame of Granger's house with a bang. If you have a fireplace here, I suggest you join the Flu Network so that you can use Flu powder. A spoonful of Flu powder only costs 2 sickles, which is really convenient, the giant muttered. Note: Flu Network is the transmission network in the wizarding world, just like a portal. The connecting nodes are mainly fireplaces, and Flu powder is a casting material. Qin Yu recognized at a glance that this was Hagrid, who had been guarding the Forbidden Forest of Hogwarts School and was one of Dumbledore's most trusted people. Hagrid walked in and looked at the people in the room who were much younger than him, and said, Who is Qin Yu? Hermione pointed in the direction of Qin Yu very enthusiastically and said, He is it. Hagrid looked over, lifted Qin Yu up and said naively, I heard you are very powerful, but it turns out you are still so young. Qin Yu smiled awkwardly and said, Didn't Professor Dumbledore tell you? If I feel uncomfortable, something bad might happen. You'd better put me down quickly. Hagrid also felt that he was a little rude. After putting Qin Yu down, he said nervously, I'm sorry, I was a little too reckless. He bent down and looked at the boy in front of him, and then said, You must have guessed my purpose, right? Qin Yu nodded and said, I've been waiting for you for a long time. Professor Dumbledore said someone would come to pick me up, but I didn't expect that the person coming would be you. I happened to be out to do some things, so he arranged for me to pick you up, Hagrid explained. After a brief exchange, Hagrid said, Okay, let's leave quickly. We have to go back within the specified time. Little boy, you don't have to miss home too much. You will be back soon. Qin Yu and the Granger family hugged each other goodbye. Little Hermione's eyes were already red at this time. She couldn't help crying at Qin Yu's departure. Qin, will you write to me? The little girl asked again. Of course I will. I promised you that I will tell you what happened to me at Hogwarts. You must also remember to reply to me, otherwise I will miss you very much. Qin Yu comforted the little girl. I will definitely write you a reply, and I will miss you too. Little Hermione hugged Qin Yu again. Mr. Granger looked at his daughter's appearance, touched her head and comforted her. Don't be sad, time flies by. You can go to that school by this time next year. Well, Qin, you have to study hard and don't let me, a schoolgirl, surpass you, Hermione said to Qin Yu. Qin Yu smiled at the little girl's instructions. In this way, under the watchful eyes of Hermione and the Grangers, Qin Yu followed Hagrid and left with the luggage that Mrs. Granger helped him pack. In fact, before leaving, Mr. Granger called Qin Yu to the study alone. Mr. Granger said to him, You have been living in our home for a long time. Although you can't find your family for the time being, we will always accompany you to grow up. If you need anything, just ask. You will go to magic school soon, and you will definitely do it. There's a lot to buy. After saying this, Mr. Granger gave him an envelope, and Qin Yu knew as soon as he touched it that it contained a lot of banknotes. Qin Yu originally wanted to say that he had money. However, when I thought about it, it was hard to explain the origin of my 1,000 galleons. So, he accepted Mr. Granger's kindness and said seriously to Mr. Granger, I will definitely pay you back. Chapter 7. At present, Qin Yu has 2 pieces of money, One is the 1,000 gold galleons bursary awarded by the system, and the other is the 500 pounds funded by Mr. Granger. It must be said that Mr. Granger is quite generous. 500 pounds is a lot of money nowadays. It is already very rich for an ordinary junior high school student. I just don't know whether the currency of the Muggle world can be converted into galleons. Convenient. The money rewarded by the system was kept in the wizard bank. Qin Yu only had a vault key in his hand, and the vault number was 712. After leaving the Granger family, Hagrid took Qin Yu on the tram. On the tram, Qin Yu asked, "Are we going to buy something soon? I may need to go to the wizard bank first. I have some pounds and—" Hagrid was surprised and said, "You seem to know very well. We are indeed going to Diagon Alley to buy some needed things. I will take you to Gringotts in a moment. It is a bank managed by goblins and used by muggles. You can exchange it for a certain percentage of gold galleons there, but there are many exchange restrictions. Fortunately, you are a first-year freshman, and with your admission notice, they will give you a certain amount of exchange." Qin Yu nodded, and then asked curiously, "I heard that goblins can perform magic. Who is more powerful than wizards?" "Yes, goblin sorcery is an ancient magic, and they have certain talents in this area. However, goblins are still very weak in front of some powerful wizards," Hagrid said with a somewhat unconvinced tone. "Oh, that's it. Of course, Gringotts, which is guarded by goblins, is quite safe. You can store your money and valuables there without worrying about being stolen," Hagrid added. Little did he know, he had unknowingly set a flag for Gringotts that could fall at any time. As the two chatted in the car, Qin Yu learned more about the wizarding world and what kind of school supplies he should purchase. After the tram stopped at a certain stop, Hagrid led Qin Yu off the train, and they turned around and arrived at a place that looked very dirty. Hagrid pointed to the front and said, "This is the Leaky Cauldron. We will go from here to Diagon Alley in a moment, where you can buy everything you need." Qin Yu looked at this inconspicuous place and thought, "This is too narrow. How can it look like a bar? And can a body as big as Hagrid fit in? Only wizards can see here. It seems that the muggles passing by are not visible at all." Before he could say anything, Hagrid pushed him in. As soon as he walked in, Qin Yu felt his head suddenly buzzing because it was so noisy here. Everyone was chatting away. One group of people were talking loudly, saying that there was really no one in the wizarding world now. Even Cornelius Fudge could become the Minister of Magic. Another person was mysterious. Secretly speaking, it was not that Dumbledore had no intention of power and just wanted to stay at Hogwarts and teach children how to make potions. Qin Yu wanted to hear what they would say next, but Hagrid had no intention of stopping and strode forward. After the bar owner looked at them, he greeted Hagrid warmly and was about to give him a drink. Hagrid waved his hand and said, "I have something else to do. Let's drink another day." Hagrid felt that he could take the little wizard to buy things, especially the tasks assigned by Dumbledore. He felt inexplicably a sense of mission. He actually wanted to go and have a drink or two, but business was more important. After Hagrid nodded, he took Qin Yu toward the bar. After going around, they came to a place that looked like a dead end. Of course Qin Yu knew this famous scene. Sure enough, Hagrid took an umbrella and tapped the bricks on the wall with the tip of the umbrella, muttering something like some mantras in his mouth. The bricks on the wall suddenly rearranged themselves, revealing an arched doorway, and on the other side of the doorway, a road appeared on one side, and on both sides of the road were various small shops with signs. "Hurry up, little one. We don't have much time," Hagrid urged. Then, Qin Yu followed Hagrid through the door with some excitement and walked into the legendary Diagon Alley. Advertisement, and when they entered, the door automatically closed again. Apart from the magic school, what Qin Yu wants to go to the most is Diagon Alley. There are many novelties here, which are more interesting than those in Muggle shops. As they walked on the street, Qin Yu wished he could have 8 more eyes. He walked all the way looking around, all the shops. The objects in front of the shops and the people shopping are very similar to those seen in the movies, but they are also very different. That unique aura belonging to the magical world made Qin Yu confused for a while. "This is Gringotts Bank." Hagrid's voice brought Qin Yu back to his senses. Qin Yu looked up and saw that they arrived in front of a white building. This house was much higher than the surrounding shops, making it stand out from the crowd. There was a goblin waiting at the door. The goblin was shorter than Qin Yu at this age. He had a pointed beard, and his fingers and feet were very long. When Qin Yu and Hagrid walked in, the goblin bowed to them. "Hi." Qin Yu subconsciously waved hello. When he came to the second door, Qin Yu sighed in his heart. No matter where he is, the bank is the most elegant. The doors here are all silver, but there are some interesting words engraved on this door. "Yes. Come in, stranger." but beware of the consequences of greed. The latter sentence is probably similar to don't mess with me, I'm super fierce. After Qin Yu walked in, he looked at the goblin employees sitting on both sides and muttered, "There are really a lot of employees here. There are dozens or hundreds of goblins behind the counter, and they all look very focused, turning a blind eye to those who have nothing to do with it. The temperament of managing money is really different," Hagrid said from the side. "Okay, I just asked. The counter at the front is where gold galleons are exchanged." Qin Yu looked over and saw an elderly elfin old man sitting at the counter at the end. He was wearing a well-dressed suit and a pair of gold-rimmed glasses on his pointed nose. There was a hint of majesty in his eyes, staring straight at him. People seemed to be able to see through your thoughts at a glance. Qin Yu had already taken the money out of his pocket. Although he found these goblins unpleasant, he had to follow the rules when he came here. These goblins didn't know whether it was because of their short stature, but the height of the counter was far beyond Qin Yu's height. Qin Yu had no choice but to hand the money to Hagrid and let him handle it on his behalf. The goblin sitting on it asked, "What are you going to do?" Hagrid said, "We are here to exchange gold galleons. This is Mr. Qin Yu, who is going to Hogwarts School soon." The goblin looked at Qin Yu, then carefully reviewed his admission notice, and then said in an emotionless tone, "You have an exchange quota of 50 galleons? Ah, so few." Qin Yu was a little surprised. Hagrid has just introduced to him that the current exchange rate of pounds to gold galleons is 5:1. So doesn't he only have the option to exchange for 250 pounds? Young wizard, you have to know that finance is a very dangerous thing. We cannot let the currency of the Muggle world affect the wizarding world too much, and the same goes for it. The goblin explained in a cold tone. "Is there any way to increase the exchange limit?" Qin Yu asked. "Of course. For example, if you have an account in Gringotts and there are certain funds or items in this account, we can increase the exchange limit for you based on 10% of the total value of these items," the goblin said slowly. Upon hearing this, Qin Yu took out his vault key and handed it over on tiptoe. Chapter 8. Wow, I didn't expect you to be a little rich man. After vault number 712 was opened, Hagrid couldn't help but sigh. 1,000 gold galleons was really a huge amount of money for Hagrid, who spent all his money on magical animals. Qin Yu touched his nose, feeling a little embarrassed by Hagrid's words. However, it was hard to explain too much to him. After all, Qin Yu himself couldn't explain the origin of the money. After Hagrid sighed with emotion, he said nothing more and asked Qin Yu to withdraw the money by himself. He took advantage of this opportunity to quietly ask the treasury keeper about the situation of the vault number 713 next to him. After getting answers such as impregnable and foolproof, Hagrid said, "That's good," repeatedly, and then looked much more relieved. Qin Yu glanced at the vault next to him, shrugged, and thought to himself that the things in there were not something he could touch, and he could easily get into trouble, so he should stay away as much as possible. After exchanging the pounds and withdrawing some money, Qin Yu and the two left Gringotts. However, as soon as they came out of the gate of Gringotts, someone greeted Hagrid. "Hi, Hagrid, long time no see," the man said enthusiastically. "Bill Weasley? Why are you here? I heard that you went to work in Egypt." Hagrid looked at this man with some surprise. "I do work in Egypt, but recently a batch of cursed treasures happened to be transported back to Gringotts for safekeeping, so I came here with the escort team." "Hey, I'm going home by the way," Bill Weasley said with a smile. "Oh, it turns out you are doing it for personal gain," Hagrid joked. "There is no way. There will be no summer vacation after work, so I can only take advantage of this opportunity to come back," Bill said helplessly, spreading his hands. "By the way, let me introduce you. This is Qin Yu, a freshman who just entered school this year." Hagrid did not forget to introduce the little guy next to him to Bill. "Hello, Qin Yu. I am Bill Weasley, and I am also a student at Hogwarts, but I have graduated for a year." Bill greeted Qin Yu. "Hello, Senior Bill. Nice to meet you." Qin Yu greeted him with a smile. Of course Qin Yu knew him, the eldest son of the Weasley family and Ron's eldest brother. He should have gone to Egypt to work as a treasure breaker after graduating last year. Qin Yu was also a little surprised to meet him here, just like Hagrid. What a polite junior. Unlike my two twin brothers who only do mischief all day long. Qin, if you meet two twins who like to play tricks at Hogwarts, you must report it. "Teacher, I hope the teacher can discipline them well," Bill said to Qin Yu. Qin Yu could only mumble about his remarks about annihilating relatives for justice, and said to himself, the Weasley family is indeed a loving father and a filial son, and brothers and sisters are respectful to each other. "Stop talking. I have to deliver things and go home to see Ron and Ginny." Bill was about to leave when he suddenly remembered something and took out a small object as big as a palm and said to Qin Yu, "Junior brother Qin, I'll give you a small gift. This is a small pyramid I made. Just treat it as a greeting gift." "Ah, this looks very expensive. How can I accept it?" Qin Yu said quickly. "It's okay. This is a gadget I made when I was bored in Egypt. It's not worth much. Each of my younger brothers and sisters has one. I'll tell you a little secret. I used it. The ancient spell decrypted in the pyramid. If you put a cherry or something in it, it can stay fresh for a long time," Bill said with a mysterious face. One thing to say, Qin Yu was quite moved when he saw this small object. After all, he had never received any gifts from the magical world. Even though Bill said this thing was not worth much, it was still novel enough for Qin Yu. "Take it quickly." As Bill said this, he put the small pyramid directly into Qin Yu's hand, and then waved and said, "See you when you have a chance, Qin. Goodbye, Hagrid." "Thank you, Senior Bill. See you again when you have the opportunity." Qin Yu also waved goodbye to him. After saying goodbye to the two of them, Bill happily walked into Gringotts to hand over the items. Looking at the pyramid in his hand, Qin Yu thought to himself, "Just take it. At worst, I will take more care of my stupid junior Ron in the future." Advertisement. Well, according to the time of admission, Ron is indeed Qin Yu's junior student. After coming out of Gringotts and passing by the owl shop, Qin Yu remembered that he wanted to write a letter to Hermione. Although we haven't officially enrolled yet, the messenger can take care of it first. He saw the sign on the door saying, "Tawny Owl, Screech Owl, Straw Owl, Brown Owl, Snowy Owl." Qin Yu thought to himself that these are protected animals in the Muggle world. Being a postman is a bit of a luxury. He walked around the room and chose the Snowy Owl without hesitation. This one was indeed the most beautiful one. However, after looking at the price of 18 galleons, Qin Yu felt a pang of pain for no reason. If calculated according to the current exchange rate, this is 90 pounds. However, when I thought about it, it seemed that the price was not too expensive when averaged every day, so I just treated it as a pre-deposited phone bill. So, Qin Yu took out 18 gold galleons from his money bag, lined them up on the counter, and then took the beautiful owl from the shop owner. When Hagrid saw him holding this snowy owl, he praised, "This is a relatively rare species. You have really good taste." Qin Yu nodded in agreement. At this time, the owl was already standing on Qin Yu's arm, staring at him with round eyes. Looking at the cute little guy on his arm, he said, "From now on, you can call me Trig." "Yeah, it's a good name." Hagrid's English was so-so, but he just thought the name sounded good. Carrying the cage with the owl in it, Qin Yu, led by Hagrid, went to Flourishes and Blott's bookstore to buy textbooks. Compared with the expensive owl, the price of these textbooks is much more affordable. The first-grade textbooks are basically 1 galleons each. Qin Yu only paid a dozen galleons to purchase all the books on the item list, among which there are Beginner's Guide to Transfiguration, Dark Powers, A Guide to Self-Defense, 1,000 Magic Herbs and Fungi, Standard Spells, Elementary, etc., covering all the subjects he needs to learn in the first grade. The thing was a bit heavy, so Hagrid enthusiastically helped Qin Yu hold it. He was much stronger than Qin Yu, a little kid. Continuing to walk forward, Qin Yu wanted to stop in front of each store to see what was sold inside. Hagrid next to him had no choice but to pat him on the shoulder and said, "Qin, we have to go to Oliphant quickly. There is a wand shop in Germany. You need to buy a good wand. There is so much to see in Diagon Alley. I will bring you back when I have time." "Well, I will definitely come back if I have the chance. I feel like there are business opportunities everywhere," Qin Yu said with emotion. Regarding the business opportunities mentioned by the little boy, the bearded Hagrid couldn't help but curled his lips and disagreed in his heart. He felt that the people here were very treacherous, and he had to spend a lot of money every time he came here. This made him even worse, who was already not wealthy. Therefore, he had to leave quickly today and could not stay too long. He was afraid that if time went by, he would see some animals he wanted to buy. Woo, woo, woo. Hagrid was walking when he suddenly heard 3 canine roars. His eyes lit up, and he immediately stopped and listened. His intuition told him that this was the cry of a rare magical creature. Out of curiosity, he couldn't help but walk in the direction of the sound, completely forgetting the self-admonition in his heart just now. "Hagrid, what do you think I should open a store here? Do you need a business license here? By the way, Hagrid, since you have so many pets, can you use, What about people?" Qin Yu was walking and talking. When he looked back, he found that Hagrid had gone nowhere. "Are you in a hurry as promised? Why are the people missing?" Qin Yu really has a black line on his forehead. Chapter 9. Hagrid is lost. This discovery made Qin Yu helpless. He had to give up going to the wand shop and started looking for this guy everywhere. After searching for a long time, he finally saw a group of people gathering in front of a bar. And far away, Qin Yu saw Hagrid, who was much taller than the others. Qin Yu hurried over, pushed aside the crowd of onlookers, and came to Hagrid's side. 500 galleons is too much. I don't have that much money now. Can you wait until I raise money and then come back to buy it? Hagrid said to the thin man opposite him in a pleading tone. Next to the man, squatting was a big dog with 3 heads tied by an iron chain. 3-headed dog. Well, when he saw this 3-headed dog, Qin Yu immediately understood what was going on. Hagrid must have relapsed into his animal addiction. However, looking at the 3-headed dog, Qin Yu had to say that even if it were him, he would have the urge to buy it. It's so majestic to lead him out like this. Let's see who dares to mess with me then. However, it is obvious that this business is not easy to negotiate. Sorry, big guy, I can't guarantee that I can wait until you come back. After all, this thing is very popular. The thin man said slowly. What should I do? I really want it, but I don't have that much money right now, Hagrid said with an embarrassed look on his face, while looking at the 3-headed dog eagerly. Seeing this scene, Qin Yu couldn't help holding his forehead with a headache. He complained crazily in his heart. Hagrid, even if you want it again, don't show it so obviously, okay? Aren't you waiting to be ripped off by this person? When the man saw that Hagrid was silent, he continued, Well, let me see if you have anything valuable on you. As long as it's worth 500 galleons, I will sell you this 3-headed dog. Hagrid was delighted when he heard this, and was about to take out something when his hand was patted by a small hand. Huh, Qin. Hagrid looked at Qin Yu with some surprise. Did you just see me now? Qin Yu couldn't help but rolled his eyes. Hagrid, please wait a moment. Qin Yu whispered to him. Oh, okay. Hagrid nodded subconsciously. He thought this little guy looked quite smart, so asking him to wait for a moment must have profound meaning. Qin Yu then turned to the thin man and asked, Boss, what breed is your 3-headed dog? Of course it's a Greek purebred 3-headed dog. I bought it from a Greek at a huge price. The thin man said proudly, raising his chin. Hagrid, is that so? Qin Yu turned to Hagrid. It is true that there is a very obvious Greek 3-headed dog ancestry. However, one of the heads has the characteristics of a Nordic dog. It is debatable to say that it is a purebred. Hagrid was very professional when he talked about magical animals. You're talking nonsense. I won't sell you now. Let's go. Don't block my business, the thin man said angrily. Hagrid was anxious now. Even if it wasn't a purebred Greek 3-headed dog, he still wanted it. In desperation, he cast nervous eyes on Qin Yu. Qin Yu smiled and said calmly, Sir, if you want to say that we are talking nonsense, you are looking down on the gentleman next to me. After saying this, he raised his hand and introduced Hagrid. This gentleman is a teacher from Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry who has a deep knowledge of magical animals. Do you think his words are nonsense? Qin Yu was telling the truth. He was the warden of the hunting grounds and the guardian of the Forbidden Forest. Of course, he could barely be considered a teacher at Hogwarts. As for his deep research on magical animals, there was nothing wrong with this sentence. The thin man was stunned for a moment, looking a little embarrassed in the eyes of everyone. However, he immediately frowned and said, You said he is a teacher at Hogwarts, is he? If you want to verify, you can write to Dumbledore, the principal of Hogwarts, Qin Yu said, showing a harmless smile. Seeing how confident he looked, the thin man believed what he said. I don't care. I'm going to sell it for 500 galleons today. Who said that if I'm not a purebred Greek 3-headed dog, I can't sell it for 500 galleons? The thin man simply acted arrogantly. He was determined that Hagrid wanted to buy this dog, and he made it clear that he would raise the price accordingly. Qin Yu held down Hagrid, who was about to speak, smiled at the man and said, Sir, you can see that we really want to buy your 3-headed dog. Advertisement, huh? The man snorted coldly, with an arrogant look on his face. But besides us, look around and see who else is willing to buy your big guy? Qin Yu said unhurriedly. Yes, the most important condition for raising a 3-headed dog is a large space at home. This is also the reason why many people can't buy it even if they want to. As soon as this was said, the onlookers all laughed. They really just came to watch the fun and had no intention of buying. So what? I can always wait for the next person who is willing to buy. The thin man's momentum obviously weakened. Next person? I don't know if it will be until the end of the year of the monkey. I don't know if your money can last until that day. Qin Yu put away his smile and said slowly, Humph, I have a lot of money, the thin man said, trying to stay calm. Oh, really? If you are rich, why do you feed this three-headed dog all potatoes? Look at how thin they are. Qin Yu pointed at the three-headed dog and said, with 3 heads and 3 mouths, the food consumption is astonishing. This man can't even afford meat. If he continues to raise him, he will only become poor. Qin Yu actually wanted to say that even you are so thin that you look like you haven't showered in half a year. You don't look like someone with a lot of money. However, there is no need to be too revealing at this time. The man obviously heard the subtext of Qin Yu's words, and his face suddenly turned red. I don't need you to worry about it. I'll sell it for 500 galleons. The thin man reiterated his price again. However, anyone can see this time that he has lost much confidence, except of course Hagrid, who only has eyes for the three-headed dog now. Okay, there is no need to discuss it. Hagrid, let's go. If there is any further delay, Professor Dumbledore will be angry. Qin Yu greeted Hagrid and left. Hagrid opened his mouth, intending to say something. But when Qin Yu gave him a sharp look, he immediately swallowed what he wanted to say and walked towards the outskirts of the crowd with his head lowered. However, he had just taken 2 steps when he heard the anxious voice of the thin man behind him. Don't leave. Qin Yu stopped, turned around and said, Sir, do you have anything else to do? Tell me how much money you plan to pay. The thin man said dejectedly, 50 galleons. Qin Yu stretched out a hand and gestured. Why don't you go and grab it? Are you so good at bargaining? The thin man's eyes widened immediately. You asked me to bid. Besides, my owl is only 18 galleons. It's quite reasonable for me to pay 50 galleons for your dog. Qin Yu said seriously. For 100 galleons, if you want to buy it, you can buy it. If you don't, you'll be thrown out, the thin man said bitterly. 150 tripled. I'm already very sincere. Qin Yu said seriously. 380. I'll just earn some shipping money, the thin man said with a pained look on his face. 180. I think the profit must be more than this, Qin Yu said lightly. 350. If you make any more counter-offers, I really won't sell it. 200. If you keep doing this, we won't buy it. The two of them were going back and forth, and the thin man became more and more distressed, while Qin Yu always looked calm and relaxed. In the end, the thin man lost the battle and was willing to sell the three-headed dog for 245 galleons. As for why it was not an integer like 250, it was because according to the little boy, 205 was to their east. Not an auspicious number. This price made Hagrid so happy that he could stuff Qin Yu's head in with his grin. Pay the money, Hagrid, Qin Yu said to this stupid uncle. Hagrid suddenly looked embarrassed when he heard this. Qin Yu was stunned. You don't even have 245 galleons, do you? Then you can pay me half the sky-high price. The thin man was about to cry without tears. Well, I really don't have that much money, Hagrid said awkwardly. Forget it. Good people will do it to the end. Qin Yu reluctantly put his hand into his money bag. Chapter 10. Qin, you are so awesome. You just cut the price in half. Hagrid bought the three-headed dog with satisfaction and admired Qin Yu's ability. Actually, as long as you don't act so eager, you can negotiate the price, Qin Yu said. It's definitely not as low as the price you cut. Didn't you see the boss's expression? He felt so distressed. Do you think he lost a lot of money on this business? Hagrid said at the end, a little guilty. You actually sympathize with that profiteer? Qin Yu was speechless at Uncle Han's naivety. He sighed and continued, I can tell you responsibly that this person definitely has at least 100 galleons in profit. Hagrid didn't believe it. Evaluate for yourself. What is your psychological price for this three-headed dog? Qin Yu said angrily. Probably between 150 to 200 galleons. However, this kind of creature is not easy to encounter, and I haven't seen it for a long time, Hagrid replied. So, let's give him 245, and he has already made a lot. There is a proverb in the East that says, from the southern capital to the northern capital, the people who buy things are never as smart as the people who sell things. This I'll give it to you. Please understand it well. Qin Yu taught Uncle Han how to trade for free. Oh, I understand. Hagrid nodded, showing an expression of realization. Qin Yu secretly said, you can teach me, but Hagrid almost choked him with his next words. When I go shopping in the future, I will definitely take you with me, so that I can save a lot of money. Hagrid said happily. Looking at Hagrid's honest and wise eyes, Qin Yu suddenly realized that this guy must be the legendary wise man. Qin Yu lent Hagrid 235 gold galleons and allowed him to repay it in 12 installments. The reason was simple. Hagrid really had no money, so he could only collect it slowly. As a result, Qin Yu became Hagrid's big creditor, which gave him some confidence in front of this big man. However, Hagrid did not have the consciousness of being a debtor. He asked Qin Yu to go to the wand shop alone to choose a wand, while he happily arranged Lu Wei's shipment. Oh, Lu Wei is the name Hagrid just named the three-headed dog. After the two separated, Qin Yu walked towards the wand shop and continued his half-day tour of Diagon Alley. He passed by a store on the way and saw several little boys standing there, staring at the broomsticks in the window with gleaming eyes. Qin Yu secretly thought, this must be the broomstick Harry will use later, the new Nimbus 2000. In the world of broomsticks, there are many levels. The Sideswipe series is roughly similar to a bicycle, the Nimbus 2000 is equivalent to a car, and the Firebolt is a supercar. It is said that the price of a Firebolt is about 1 or 2,000 gold galleons, or even higher. Qin Yu does not have the financial resources to buy it anyway, and he does not have a godfather who comes from a wealthy family like Sirius. Freshmen are not allowed to bring broomsticks, so now he doesn't have to worry about which one to buy. Qin Yu continued to walk forward, looking around at the shops in Diagon Alley, and bought robes, cloaks, crucibles, scales, and other things by the way, which were all written on the admission list. Of course, he actually had the urge to buy many things here when he saw them, even those disgusting-looking bat guts and eel eyes. Unfortunately, he didn't have much money left after lending it to Hagrid. However, he still chose a hairpin with a kitten pattern and planned to give it to Hermione. Little boy, my mother-in-law tells you that this hairpin is very popular now. It not only looks good, but also lights up at night. Little girls like it very much. The old lady from the grocery store said with a smile. After imagining Hermione wearing this hairpin, Qin Yu thought it was quite interesting, especially when it glowed at night. So, he smiled and said, I hope she likes it. Then, Qin Yu paid 10 cents to buy the card and kept it properly. Well, after he walked a long way, he realized that he seemed to have forgotten to make a counteroffer just now. Ollivander's, a 1,000-year-old brand, has finally been found. Although Qin Yu has watched the movie, he still feels that this wand shop with a history of nearly 2,400 years is too shabby. Probably, the magical world pays attention to this old style of, the aroma of wine is not afraid of the depth of the alley. Qin Yu thought so in his heart. He pressed his hand on the old door, as if feeling the ancient atmosphere of time, and then pushed the door open with excitement. Oh, hello, young gentleman. Do you want to buy a wand? Ollivander, a thin man with messy hair, greeted Qin Yu. Advertisement, yes, Mr. Ollivander. I want to choose my first wand, Qin Yu said. The first one? It seems that you are a freshman this year. However, it is already September 1st, so you are a bit late, Ollivander said jokingly. Well, it's mainly because my admission guide picked me up late, Qin Yu said awkwardly. Well, it doesn't matter. Although I'm a little pressed for time, I believe you will be able to find your favorite wand here. The first wand, Ollivander said with a smile. Then, he began to look for a suitable wand based on Qin Yu's size. Rosewood Dragon Heartstring Wand Core, try this. Boss Ollivander took out a wand from a wooden box and handed it to Qin Yu. Qin Yu held it in his hand, thought about the scene in the movie, and raised his hand to wave it. Who knew that before his hand fell, Ollivander hurriedly reached out and snatched the wand from Qin Yu's hand. This one is obviously not suitable. The dragon heartstring will increase your destructive power and danger. I can't stand the trouble here, Ollivander muttered, and removed the core of the rosewood dragon heartstring. Wand put away. Then he went to look for wooden boxes in the grids, and muttered in his mouth, Beechwood, no. The troll's beard is a bit crazy. The tail feathers of the thunderbird, and the same as dragon heartstrings, too dangerous. Oh, Hollywood. Phoenix feathers, this one is obviously more inappropriate. Silver willow wood. Unicorn hair. Wow, this is it. After rummaging around, Ollivander finally happily pulled out a wooden box from the shelf, opened it, and took out a silver gray wand from inside. Try it, kid. Ollivander handed over the wand. Qin Yu took it carefully and waved the wand again. But this time, Ollivander did not stop him. As Qin Yu lowered his wand, a soft light suddenly lit up in the room. Silver willow is tough, and unicorn hair is gentle and steady. The combination of the two allows you to better control your power. The wand is like a person's partner. Only by complementing each other can the perfect magic be released. Ollivander expressed deep emotion there. Looking at Ollivander's half-smiling eyes, Qin Yu secretly guessed that this old staff maker, old magician, must have seen something. The power of Obscurus in his body was powerful and easy to get out of control, so Ollivander stopped him from using the dragon heartstring wand. The one made of silver willow and unicorn hair is relatively gentle, and Qin Yu can control the power in his body well when using it. What suits you is the best? For such a careful choice, Qin Yu had to admire Ollivander's professionalism. It can be said that he has a sharp vision and comprehensiveness. Thank you, Mr. Ollivander, Qin Yu said sincerely. Haha, you're welcome. It's my lifelong pursuit to allow everyone who comes to buy a wand to find their own wand, Ollivander said with a smile. Qin Yu held his first magic wand in his 2 lives and felt the aura it conveyed, feeling extremely excited inside. From now on, follow me to explore this magical world, Qin Yu said silently in his heart. As if he felt Qin Yu's heartfelt voice, the wand trembled slightly, and the tip emitted a burst of soft light. After choosing the wand, Qin Yu paid 7 galleons and put it away with satisfaction. Seeing that there were only a few gold galleons and a dozen silver coins left in the wallet, he intuitively felt what it meant to be poor. Alas, although 1,000 gold galleons is quite a lot, it can't be settled in vain. Qin Yu sighed secretly. Goodbye, Mr. Ollivander. Qin Yu politely said goodbye to Ollivander while thinking about how to increase revenue and reduce expenditure. Goodbye, little boy, and welcome to your next visit. Ollivander also said goodbye to him, and then, as if something suddenly occurred to him, he continued. By the way, if there is any problem with your wand, I can help it here. Provide after-sales service of one-time free stick core replacement. Qin Yu was about to walk out, but after hearing Ollivander's words, his eyes lit up and he stopped. Qin Yu asked carefully, Mr. Ollivander, do you accept the materials for the core of the staff? For example, unicorn hair, phoenix feathers, etc. He had just heard Ollivander talk about these things. Ollivander was stunned when he heard this, nodded subconsciously and said, Take it, these are very useful materials, necessary for me to make a wand. When Qin Yu heard this, he smiled happily. Hagrid's large collection of magical animals and Dumbledore's phoenix came to mind. Chapter 11. After reaching a preliminary supply agreement with Ollivander's, Qin Yu and I left this 1,000-year-old wand store in a happy mood. After checking the admission list again to confirm that nothing was missing, he went to the place where Hagrid checked in. Qin, I'm afraid I can't accompany you on the train, Hagrid said apologetically. Well, I had a hunch, Qin Yu said with a shrug. Uncle Hagrid's character design is probably 100% trouble-free. You can trust his character, but you absolutely can't count on him not to do something wrong. It's like this. They said that Lu Wei is more dangerous and needs a sign-off person. Therefore, I have to go back to school and wait. In this case, I won't be able to take the train back with you, Hagrid explained to Qin Yu. It's okay, Hagrid. I'm not a child anymore. It's okay to take the train by myself, Qin Yu said calmly. Although he looks like an 11-year-old boy, his soul is that of an adult in his 20s. Moreover, when he went to college, he took the train alone. So this time it was not much different. Then I'll take you to the station first. Then you can take the train with the others, Hagrid said. Well, okay. Qin Yu nodded and said. This time they did not take the Muggle world's transportation, but found a fireplace connected to the Floo network. Hagrid first sprinkled a handful of Floo powder in, then called out the name of the train station. After a puff of green smoke, the big man disappeared into the fireplace. Qin Yu followed suit and completed a Floo network transmission amidst the green smoke. In the blink of an eye, they appeared in a fireplace near the train station. How does it feel to use Floo powder for the first time? Hagrid asked with a smile. To be honest, the process is a bit fast. I'm here before I can experience what it feels like, Qin Yu replied. Well, you are quite lucky. The fireplaces in Diagon Alley in here are very clean. The first time I used them, I really ate a lot of ashes. After Hagrid finished speaking, he burst out laughing, thinking about his childhood. The experience is full of nostalgia. It seems that I will have to wear a mask when using Floo powder in the future. Qin Yu thought for a while and said, It's a good idea, but you have to put it on immediately after calling out the place name, which requires fast hand speed. Hagrid added. It was already 10:40 in the morning, and there were only 20 minutes left before departure. The two of them stopped riding, and Hagrid took Qin Yu to buy tickets quickly. After buying the ticket, Qin Yu asked Hagrid to leave, while he pushed the luggage cart into the station. With a different mood, Qin Yu found the position between platforms 9 and 10. There is the legendary Station 9 and March 4th, a gateway to the magical school of magic, Hogwarts. However, he was so excited that when he looked at the wall, Qin Yu really didn't dare to hit it. There is no way, What if this thing malfunctions and you hit your head and get bleeding? After all, this kind of thing has happened before. Just when Qin Yu was hesitating, he heard a middle-aged woman's very impatient voice coming from not far away. George, Fred, you are really taking your time. If you didn't want Ron and Ginny to see where the train is in advance, I really wouldn't want to send you here. Who made Bill come back suddenly? We have to catch up with him, said a boy's voice. Yes, Bill finally came home. We have to let him feel our enthusiasm. Another almost identical voice also said. Oh, your enthusiasm is to ask Bill to bring you more gifts next time, the middle-aged woman mocked. Advertisement. Qin Yu listened to their conversation and turned to look. Sure enough, I saw a hot-tempered middle-aged woman and 7 children beside her. Good guy, the Weasley kids are all here. This middle-aged woman is of course Molly Weasley, and the children around her are the eldest son Bill, the second son Charlie, 7th grade, the third son Percy, 4th grade, and the twin brothers George and Fred, 2nd grade, and little Ron and little Ginny who have not yet entered school. Huh, Qin, we meet again. Bill greeted Qin Yu happily after seeing him. Qin, are you the little boy Bill said he met at the gate of Gringotts? I am Bill's mother. Nice to meet you, Mrs. Weasley said in a gentle tone. Yes, I am Qin Yu. Nice to meet you too, Mrs. Weasley. Qin Yu responded politely. Qin Yu still has a good impression of this elder. What a beautiful and sensible child. By the way, these are Charlie and Percy. They are both seniors. If you have anything, you can ask them for help. These are my youngest sons, Ron and daughter Ginny. They are about to reach school age, and you will soon become alumni. Mrs. Weasley introduced enthusiastically. George. Fred. Qin Yu also said hello to them one by one, and Ron and Ginny were full of curiosity when they greeted Qin Yu. Of course, Qin Yu has long admired Ron, one of the 3 people who were deducted points from Gryffindor. However, the train wasn't waiting for anyone, and he didn't have time to talk to the Weasleys anymore. Children, the train will leave in 2 minutes. Come into the station quickly. Have a nice trip, Qin. Charlie, Percy, you have to take good care of Qin. After Mrs. Weasley said this, she faced the twin brothers yelled, George, Fred, put away your messy things. If you dare to disturb the order on the train, you will be finished. The twins made a face together, pushed the luggage trolley one after another, and rushed to platform 9 and March 4th. Charlie and Percy followed. Qin Yu nodded goodbye to Mrs. Weasley and the others, took a deep breath, and rushed over with the luggage trolley. Then, he came to the train station hidden in the world without any hindrance. At this time, the Hogwarts Express emits a distant whistle, reminding all the students that it is time to return to school. After checking in and getting on the bus, Charlie, as a prefect, had to maintain order, while Percy was dull and unsociable. So Qin Yu fell into the hands of the twin brothers, and the 3 of them sat in a box together. However, Qin Yu certainly has nothing to fear from these 2 little brats. After buying a bunch of candies on the trolley with 1 gold galleon, the 2 brothers were bribed by Qin Yu. Along the way, Qin Yu was bored and chatted with the 2 brothers. The business model in the wizarding world is still too conservative, especially the application of the Flu network, which is mainly used to transport people. This utilization rate is too low. I think the sharing economy should be a major trend, such as sharing the sky broomsticks can directly address the pain point of wizards' travel inconvenience. Traditional newspapers like the Daily Prophet will be eliminated sooner or later, and new media forms will surely replace them. This is a major opportunity, and the cultural industry of wizards really lacks enough innovation. Has no one ever thought of making an epic fantasy movie? George and Fred originally treated Qin Yu as if they were children. However, as Qin Yu came out with words they had never heard of before, their attitudes gradually changed 180 degrees. Change. The 2 of them have dreamed of getting rich since they were young. Although they didn't quite understand the various business models Qin Yu mentioned, this did not prevent them from feeling that they were great opportunities to realize their dreams. And Qin Yu also became taller in their eyes. Seeing the twins excitedly discussing how to set the rental price of broomsticks and how to make better use of the Flu network, Qin Yu showed a faint smile. Well, next, he shouldn't have to worry about helpers. Chapter 12. These things we planned will definitely not be realized in a while, and what we can do now is to continue to accumulate our own wealth, so that when the opportunity comes, we can take decisive action and seize it. Qin Yu approached as he approached. While driving in the car, I told my twin brothers, Qin, your vision is really far-sighted than ours, George said with emotion. Yeah, our dream is still limited to running a grocery store. Fred also sighed. Your ideas are actually good. Many of your wonderful ideas are enough to bring changes to the world. Qin Yu also praised them. When the two brothers heard this, they both laughed happily. Although Qin Yu is 1 year younger than them, the two brothers have been completely convinced by his knowledge after chatting all the way, and their proud and whimsical ideas can be recognized by Qin Yu. It makes them feel a little proud. When it gets dark, the Hogwarts Express slowly stops at Hogsmeade Station. The children from the magic school arrived at their destination. The senior students had to get off the bus first. George and Fred said goodbye to Qin Yu and strongly suggested that Qin Yu choose Gryffindor later before leaving. Of course, the Sorting Hat still has the final say on this matter. George said helplessly, "But we really hope you can come to Gryffindor, so that we can easily discuss plans to make a fortune together," Fred added. Qin Yu smiled and said he hoped so. When Qin Yu walked off the train with the first-year class of 1990, he happened to see the carriage leaving by the group of senior students. Looking from a distance, he could see a group of thin black, flying horses pulling the carriages speeding away. That is the Thestral, a magical creature that can only be seen by those who have seen death. Qin Yu was not surprised at all that he could see them. "Not only have I seen death, I've also died once," he muttered in his heart. "Children, follow me and get on the boat at the pier. Remember, only 4 people can sit on a boat at most. Also, don't make trouble on the boat. There are ferocious monsters in the lake. If you fall in, you may be scared." "You guys," Hagrid's voice sounded. This 3-meter-tall giant immediately aroused exclamations from the freshmen. At the same time, they also had an instinctive awe for him. After all, such a big man was 2 or 3 times taller than these children. How could they not be afraid? Of course, except Qin Yu, because they are also old acquaintances. "Qin, we meet again." Hagrid greeted Qin Yu with a smile. Qin Yu also said hello to Hagrid. Although the two had only known each other for less than a day, Qin Yu felt as if he was already very familiar with him. I don't know if it's because of their understanding in the previous life, or because Qin Yu feels friendly to Uncle Han's character, or it may be both reasons. In short, the relationship between the two is as if they have known each other for a long time. Then, Hagrid invited Qin Yu to take a boat with him. Lu Wei arrived successfully, Hagrid whispered after getting on the boat. His eyes narrowed with laughter as he spoke. He really liked that big dog. "That's good," Qin Yu said a little nervously. The reason for his nervousness was simple. Hagrid was too heavy. Even if there were 2 of them on the boat, Qin Yu was still worried that the boat would sink at any time. This greatly affected his mood when he first saw Hogwarts' magic castle. On the other hand, the children on the other boats were so surprised that they couldn't close their mouths. The towering castle building welcomes the arrival of a new batch of students like a wise man waiting for them quietly. And can they also be remembered by this legendary magic school and become new legends with her? Advertisement. As the boat approached, the freshmen couldn't help but think excitedly in their hearts. The boat stopped at the dock, and Qin Yu quickly jumped ashore. New students also came off the other boats one after another. Under the leadership of Hagrid, everyone walked into the oak door of the castle and walked through 3 flights of stairs to a foyer. After gathering here in the foyer, the unsmiling old lady Professor McGonagall explained to them the next project, the allocation of colleges. Then, when the time was almost up, the door of the Hogwarts auditorium slowly opened, and a magnificent hall as bright as day appeared in front of everyone. One thing to say, even if he already knew what this place looked like, Qin Yu still felt a strong shock when he actually walked into this auditorium. Whether it was thousands of candles suspended in the air or a sea of stars above the dome, they all gave Qin Yu an extremely fantastic and grand visual experience. When the freshmen entered the auditorium, Professor Dumbledore, who was sitting in the middle of the podium, stood up and gave a welcome speech, and also mentioned some school rules, such as not walking around at night, not going to the Forbidden Forest, etc. Qin Yu also met Severus Snape for the first time. Snape seemed to feel Qin Yu's gaze and glanced at him a few more times. However, his expression did not change and was always cold. After that, the allocation of colleges began under the auspices of Professor McGonagall. Qin Yu knew all these processes, but as a participant, he still felt quite novel. However, there were not many familiar faces among the freshmen in this class. He only knew Cho-Jong and Katie Bell. They put on the sorting hat before him and were sorted into Ravenclaw and Gryffindor respectively. When it was Qin Yu's turn, he took 2 deep breaths and stepped up the steps. Then, Professor McGonagall placed the hat that had not been washed for who knows how many years on Qin Yu's head. "Wow, a little boy from the East. Your origin is really puzzling. The powerful power and great opportunities in your body make you very suitable to go to Slytherin, where you can shine. However, your calmness and bravery are very suitable for Gryffindor. This is really a problem. The sorting hat, which would simply say the name of the college on other people's heads, was now nagging on Qin Yu's head. Qin Yu felt the talking and moving hat on his head, always feeling a little itchy. I want to go to Gryffindor. Unable to bear the irritation, Qin Yu made a choice for this hat. The reason why he went to Gryffindor was definitely not because of any plans of brothers George and Fred to get rich. He just wanted to be closer to little Hermione. After all, he promised her that he would help her get familiar with the environment first, so he had to keep his word. Since this hat was useless, he might as well make his own decision and save it from nagging at the top of his head. Okay, your choice is definitely the right one. Gryffindor. The sorting hat shouted out the name of the house Qin Yu was assigned to. The Gryffindor table suddenly burst into warm applause, especially George and Fred, who applauded most enthusiastically. Qin Yu came to the Gryffindor table amidst the applause, found an empty seat, and sat down. After the sumptuous dinner, the prefects of each grade led everyone back to the dormitory. The current prefect of Gryffindor is Charlie Weasley, who is about to graduate, and Qin Yu has met him before. Charlie led everyone to the 8th floor and said the password to a portrait of a fat lady at the end of a corridor, Dragonbeard. The portrait opened, and Charlie led everyone into the Gryffindor dormitory area. After staying in the public rest area for a while, Charlie said, "Boys go to the left and girls go to the right. Don't make a mistake." After saying this, the children all dispersed to find their own rooms. Qin Yu also walked up the stairs on the left and found the dormitory with his name on it. The first night at Hogwarts is destined to be so exciting that it is difficult to fall asleep. Qin Yu lay on the bed, thinking about many things in his past and present lives, and gradually fell asleep after a long time. Chapter 13. The schedule at Hogwarts is actually very similar to that of Qin Yu's university in his previous life. He gets up at 7 or 8 in the morning and then has dinner together in the auditorium. Classes start at 9 o'clock, with 2 classes in the morning and 2 classes in the afternoon. Then you can make your own arrangements. Of course, the content of the class must be much more exciting than in his previous life. Just like Defense Against the Dark Arts, the teacher, Stephen Swinton, is said to have been a magic doctor before. His hobby is to show various violent and bloody dynamic pictures related to dark forces during class, with the goal of impressing the students. Recently, Qin Yu and the others were learning how to deal with werewolf bites. Professor Swinton found a large number of photos of wounds from werewolf bites, as well as brutal scenes of wizards being infected and turned into werewolves. As the book says, if infection occurs after being bitten by a werewolf, it will be incurable, because this is a curse from ancient times, so you should clean up promptly and thoroughly after the bite. What is a complete cleanup? Jerome, please answer, Professor Swinton said at the end, and called on a student's name to ask questions. I don't know, Professor Swinton, a red-haired Slytherin boy said very simply. Oh, I don't know. Then I'll tell you. Professor Swinton said this, poked the stack of magic cards on the podium with his wand, and then waved it in Jerome's direction. Immediately afterwards, a group of dynamic projections appeared in front of Jerome. It was a woman, waving her wand at her bloody palm, and her palm was instantly broken off to the wrist. This picture made many classmates who were far away feel pain for the woman in the picture. It seems you still don't understand. As Professor Swinton finished speaking, another projection was led to Jerome by the wand. It was a strong man with beast bite marks on half of his face, and he directly cut off that half of his face with a wand. Wow! Seeing this scene, a noisy and frightened voice instantly sounded in the classroom. The children had never experienced such stimulation, and they were all frightened. Jerome, who was the first to bear the brunt, froze right there when he looked at the hideous wand. His throat moved slightly, and he swallowed in fear. Don't you understand yet? Professor Swinton asked. As he said this, the wand poked at the pile of magic cards again. Woo! Jerome finally couldn't bear it anymore, covered his mouth and rushed out of the door. Soon after, the sound of someone vomiting came from the corridor. TSK, Professor, is this really appropriate for you? Qin Yu couldn't help but say. Compared to becoming a werewolf and becoming a beast that no one knows, I think it's worth the little fright you have now. Professor Swinton explained seriously without feeling dissatisfied. Okay, what you said does make sense. Qin Yu said this and then asked, isn't there any better way to clean the wound? Or is there any medicine that can prevent the attack from happening? Treatment before? Qin Yu thought of the rabies vaccine in the Muggle world. Professor Swinton shook his head after hearing this and said, so far, the most effective cleaning method we can use is to peel off the wound. Of course, some people will also use some wound healing spells and not be infected in the end, but this is only a very small number of individuals. Example. As for the potion you mentioned, as far as I know, there is no magic potion that can completely prevent or cure the werewolf curse. Such answers, combined with those cruel images, made all the students look solemn. The professor paused and then continued, however, there is a wolfsbane potion that has just appeared recently that can temporarily suppress werewolf transformation, but it requires superb potion talent and ability to configure. Your potions teacher Snape the professor should be able to do the job. Of course, I hope you will never drink this potion. Advertisement, therefore, it is more appropriate for Snape to teach this lesson, right? Qin Yu secretly complained in his heart. Qin Yu actually has no impression of this Professor Swinton, and Professor Quirrell, whom he is familiar with, is still traveling somewhere and will not start teaching this course until next year. After an extremely vivid defense against the dark arts class, the students left the classroom with bad expressions and came to the auditorium in 2s and 3s to have lunch. During today's lunchtime, most of the first-year students showed very little appetite. They were not as obsessed with the house elves' cooking skills as before and ate so much. Qin Yu is of course an exception. In his previous life, he actually liked watching some crime-themed movies and TV series. There were a lot of corpses in the Shueqi Lahu. He had some immunity and returned to normal after the course. Jerome, are you okay? A little boy at the Slytherin table asked Jerome with concern. Professor Swinton is so abominable. Why do you have to target me? Jerome was still retching a little at this time and had no appetite for the food in front of him, which made him very annoyed. It seems that every teacher has his own unique tricks. I heard that Professor Snape is also very perverted, and students are often scolded and cry. The little boy said what he knew about the situation. I still prefer the history of magic class. Professor Bin's lectures have a strong sleep aid effect, and he doesn't care about sleeping, Jerome said with emotion. At the Gryffindor table where Qin Yu was sitting, the freshmen were also discussing the recent courses they had taken. They were a little nervous about Professor Snape's class, and since Snape was the dean of Slytherin House, they, the Gryffindor students, might be treated unfairly. Qin Yu, of course, smiled and said nothing. He knew that Professor Snape was actually a very gentle person at heart, but because of his personality, he acted cold on the outside. Of course, you can't tell these things to these little brats, and they won't believe you if you tell them. After lunch and a short break, roommates Wilson, Jimmy, and Bach left in a group, followed by Qin Yu and the somewhat introverted Elvis. In fact, he doesn't have much objection to getting along with these children, but there is a somewhat different interest caused by the age difference. Therefore, he and Elvis got relatively close because the kid was quieter and less noisy. Thinking of the fuss, Qin Yu couldn't help but picture Hermione chattering and talking beside him, and then, he couldn't help but smile. Qin, are you thinking about something happy? Elvis asked timidly. He is trying to get along with his classmates, but he is still a little unskilled. Qin Yu secretly thought in his heart. Yes, I thought of a friend. I promised to write her a letter before school started. I have to write it quickly today, otherwise she will be angry and cannot be coaxed. Qin Yu said with a smile. It's great that you still have friends to whom you can write letters. Elvis said enviously. You can also write to me in the future. Of course, this will have to wait until we leave school, such as winter and summer vacations, or after we graduate. Qin Yu patted his shoulder and said, Really? I will definitely write to you. Elvis said happily. I will also reply to you. Qin Yu said with a smile and then urged Elvis, we have to run faster, otherwise we may be late for potions class. After listening to Qin Yu's words, Elvis trotted with him to catch up with Wilson, Jimmy, and Burke. After Qin Yu and the two surpassed them, Jimmy shouted and started running as hard as he could, with the intention of competing to see who was faster. Naturally, Wilson and Bach were not to be left behind, and they also tried their best to keep up. For a moment, the laughter of boys chasing each other sounded in the corridor. Children's happiness is so simple. Qin Yu couldn't help but sigh. Then, he walked into the underground classroom and saw the living and cold Professor Snape already here. Chapter 14. If you think that the potions classroom is a place where you can play and fight, then you are one step closer to death, Snape said slowly in his signature feminine tone. Wilson and Jimmy, who were out of breath after running all the way, fell silent for a moment, frightened by Snape's cold words. Qin Yu did not feel scared, but said sincerely, Professor Snape, thank you for your reminder. We will definitely be careful in the future. Then, he said to the children, there are many dangerous utensils and decoctions in potions class. The professor said this to keep us away from danger. As soon as he explained, the children instantly understood Snape's kindness. And they all looked at him gratefully and said the same words of thanks as Qin Yu. This made Snape slightly stunned. He is indeed venomous and has an awkward personality, which makes many of his kind words sound like curses. However, he never expects others to respond to his kindness, and he is used to it. Now, Snape felt a little uncomfortable being thanked by several children. If Qin Yu could have the mind-reading ability of legilimency, he would definitely curse, "Old C, are you a bit of AB********************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************** arm or a leg in potions class, Snape continued to use his venomous tongue. The school bell rang, and several children quickly found their seats and sat down. Many people think that potions are not magic because they did not use the magic wand in your hand. I want to tell you that this view is completely wrong. Some people think that the preparation of potions relies on heating in a crucible. That is also a stupid, rigid thinking. Different raw materials require different preparation processes. Some need to be pressed, some need to be soaked, some need to be calcined, and some require you to use your imagination to find the most suitable one. The method. Snape slowly explained the knowledge of potions class. After hearing this, Qin Yu felt that the magic potion was indeed very particular. Yes, he was among those who thought that potions were heated in crucibles. Listening to Snape's in-depth and simple lectures, Qin Yu gradually got a taste of it, which gave him a new understanding of the magical world. Qin, tell me, what is the medicinal part of milk thistle? Professor Snape asked Qin Yu's name. Damn it, why me? I paid attention to the lecture. Qin Yu complained crazily in his heart. The main thing is that he really doesn't know what this thing is, and after buying the textbook, he took the train to school immediately. He didn't have time to look carefully, so he didn't notice this milk thistle. Even if you ask about fecal stones, I know that they are detoxifying. Leaf, Qin Yu said bravely. It is true that most plants use leaves, roots, and stems as medicine, but you chose an answer with a high probability. After Professor Snape said this slightly sarcastic sentence, he spat out another word wrong. Then, Snape looked around the class and asked, "Does anyone know?" The whole class lowered their heads and did not dare to look directly. Qin Yu secretly thought, as expected, there seems to be no Hermione-like academic leader in the class. It's a fruit. Snape said this slowly. Then, he raised his voice and said, "You haven't written it down yet." Everyone quickly picked up their pens and started writing. Potions are all about precision. 1 drop more and 1 drop less will have 2 effects. But you, Mr. Qin, use your cleverness to make random guesses. This is a perfunctory response to the potions class. So, Professor Snape said this, looked at Qin Yu, and then said, "Gryffindor, deduct 1 point to remind you what attitude you should take towards this course." Qin Yu, all in all, why did I become the first to be deducted points? He didn't care about the score. After all, he was no longer a child. But he was a little unhappy about being used as a killing chicken to scare the monkey by Old C. Advertisement. When he deducted points, all the Gryffindor students showed expressions of mourning, while many people in Slytherin showed expressions of gloating. Slytherin has won the Academy Cup for 5 consecutive years, and Gryffindor is their biggest opponent. At this time, Gryffindor was deducted points, and of course they felt happy. Qin, don't be too sad. Let's work hard to earn back the points. Elvis comforted Qin Yu as he walked after class. I don't blame you for this. Milk thistle is a very inconspicuous herb. If it were me, I wouldn't be able to answer it. Wilson also said. Yes, Professor Snape is making things difficult today. Jimmy whispered angrily. Seeing the seriousness of these children, Qin Yu couldn't say that he actually didn't care, but nodded and said, "Thank you. I will work hard to earn this point back in the future, and I will get more points." As expected, these words made everyone full of fighting spirit, and everyone became impassioned. "Come on, let's go eat quickly. I'm already hungry," Qin Yu said. Several children followed him towards the auditorium. Principal's office. Dumbledore sat on the chair behind his desk, and several teachers also sat down. "What do you think of his recent performance?" Dumbledore asked everyone. Emotionally speaking, he is not an easily excited child. When I showed so many bloody images in class, he only showed a somewhat disgusted expression after seeing them. He did not react too abnormally, even better than most. The child needs to be calmer. Of course, it may be that I didn't stimulate him enough. After all, I'm still afraid that he will suddenly lose control. The first person to speak was Professor Swinton. Dumbledore heard this, nodded, and then looked at Severus Snape. I tried ridicule, sarcasm, and even deducted a point from Gryffindor, but he is still very calm, Snape said briefly. After he said this, there was no reaction from others. Professor McGonagall on the side could not help but speak. Professor Snape, I hope your deduction of points this time is not for a random reason. Of course not. My reasons are very good, Snape said calmly. Dumbledore interrupted at the right time. Professor McGonagall, where are you? According to my observation, this child is very normal. He even cares about the classmates around him, such as Elvis. He can make this introverted child gradually become cheerful, which shows that he has a very delicate heart. My Professor Gu expressed his opinion. Yes, he is indeed very attentive and insightful. He helped me a lot in class. Herbal medicine teacher Professor Sprout said. I think he thinks too much about flying lessons. He keeps asking me why I have to ride a broomstick. Why can't I fly with a sword? His weird questions really give me a headache. By the Harry, Mrs. Hooch said distressedly. Wow, flying on a sword? This idea is indeed very strange and very oriental. Professor Swinton couldn't help but sigh. It seems that he is mentally healthy and not withdrawn or depressed. Dumbledore said in conclusion. That's true. That's right. Yeah. Everyone answered one after another. Well, this is good news. The next thing we have to do is let him live a normal life and teach him how to release magic. Dumbledore looked at everyone and said, I thought that a special student would come next year, but I didn't expect that one would come earlier this year, Professor Swinton said meaningfully. Don't worry, Stephen. I believe he will soon learn to control his power, so that you can go to the Himalayas to search for the remains of ancient wizards with peace of mind, Dumbledore said with a smile. Well, I hope so. Okay, everyone go back, Dumbledore said. The short, small meeting ended and everyone left. Chapter 15. Hermione, how was your day? Mr. Granger asked his daughter during dinner. That's it. Hermione picked up a piece of carrot without interest and put it in her mouth, chewing listlessly. Seeing her like this, Mrs. Granger couldn't help but glare at her husband, blaming him for not opening the pot. Mr. Granger sighed softly and thought to himself, there is nothing I can do. In this way, the dinner at the Granger family fell into a dull atmosphere for a while. Of course, the Grangers knew the reason. Ever since the little Oriental boy at home went to a magic school somewhere, their little daughter began to lose her smile and stare at the mailbox at home all day long, waiting for the letter sent to myself. Hermione, Qin has just started school. She must be busy with a lot of things, and it will take time to send letters. You will receive them in a few days. Mrs. Granger couldn't help but comfort her daughter. Who's waiting for his letter? I'm not. Hermione angrily poked the broccoli on the plate as if poking someone. No. We won't wait for his letter. Let's forget about him, Mrs. Granger said with a smile. Well, I've forgotten about him. I didn't miss him at all. Huh, this guy doesn't keep his words, Hermione said harshly. Just when the Grangers were laughing at their daughter's duplicity, there was a sudden knock on their door. Judging from the sound, it was probably not a human being knocking on the door. I'll go take a look. After Hermione heard the knocking sound, she stood up and opened the door. When she opened the door, a big white bird flew in from the outside. It's an owl. It's an owl, Hermione said happily after seeing the big bird. Qin Yu once said when he left that he would let an owl deliver a message to her. So when she saw a beautiful white owl flying in, Hermione immediately thought of Qin Yu. Sure enough, after the owl circled above her head, it accurately dropped a letter into her hand. Dad, Mom, it was Qin who wrote me a letter, Hermione said excitedly after seeing the words on the envelope clearly. The Grangers looked at each other and thought to themselves at the same time. They didn't know who said they were not waiting for someone's letter a minute ago. Of course, they would not say this out loud. After all, their daughter had been angry for several days and was finally happy. They did not want to offend her again. Hermione, let's eat first, and then read what Qin writes after eating, Mrs. Granger said to her daughter. Hermione put the letter aside solemnly, and then began to quickly eat the pile of food on the plate, even the vegetables she didn't usually like to eat with relish. After finishing the meal, the little girl hurriedly wiped her mouth, waved to her parents, picked up the envelope and went to her room. However, not long after, she trotted out of the room again. What's wrong? Mr. Granger asked curiously. Qin asked me to give Trig something to eat, either toast or ham. After saying this, Hermione found a plate, put some food on it, and hurried back to the room with the plate in hand. Looking at the closed bedroom, Mrs. Granger couldn't help but sigh. Thank God, Qin's letter finally came. Yes, yes, if I don't come here again, I won't dare to speak loudly at home, Mr. Granger said slightly exaggeratedly. This elicited a burst of laughter from Mrs. Granger. By the way, who is Trig? Mrs. Granger asked in confusion. I think it should be the White Owl, Mr. Granger guessed. Advertisement. Trig, eat quickly. Hermione placed the food on the plate on the windowsill. The White Owl really ate happily. In fact, Hermione hadn't opened the letter yet, but saw Qin Yu's reminder somewhere in the envelope, which read, Hermione, my owl is called Trig. He is very docile. If you give him some toast or ham, he will be closer to you. It was when Hermione saw this sentence that she went to get the food. Seeing Trig eating happily, Hermione was naturally very happy too. Then, she finally sat down and nervously opened the seal and opened the envelope. Then, she took out 2 folded pages of letter paper and a hairpin with a cat pattern from the envelope. That's not bad. You even know how to give me a gift. Classmate Hermione snorted arrogantly, but her heart felt like she had eaten honey. She happily put the hairpin on her head, carefully unfolded the 2 pages of letter paper, and read them carefully. The letter was not long and contained not much, but Hermione read it with great interest. After reading it many times, Trig the Owl jumped on her desk and interrupted her reading. Looking at the owl's round eyes, Hermione immediately understood what it meant. Sorry, Trig, I'll write a reply now. Please wait for me, Hermione said apologetically to the owl. Goo goo, Trig called out twice, forgiving her, and then flew to the windowsill again, squatting there and waiting quietly. Hermione smiled at the obedient owl, then quickly pulled out a blank piece of paper, found a pen, and prepared to write a reply to Qin Yu. Just after writing the 2 words, Dear Qin, she suddenly remembered what Qin Yu mentioned in the letter, so she reached out and touched the hairpin on her head and tapped the cat's eyes twice with her fingers. Immediately, a soft white light shone from the top of her head. What a magical and practical magic item. A smile appeared on Hermione's lips unconsciously, and then, using the light of the hairpin, she wrote what she wanted to say on the stationery, many, many words. Dear baby, it's already very late. It's time to go to bed. Mrs. Granger knocked on the door and said to her daughter. Hermione looked at the pages of written letter and said quickly, Okay, Mom, I'm going to bed now. After saying this, she quickly checked what she had written again. After she felt that there was no problem, she folded the letter paper and stuffed it into an envelope. Then, she put in some flowers, plants, and leaves she had collected over the past few days. Trig, thank you for your hard work. Hermione handed the envelope to the owl. After the owl, Trig barked twice. He held the envelope in his mouth. After nodding goodbye to Hermione, he flapped his wings twice and flew away from the open window. Watching the direction in which the owl left, Hermione was stunned for a while, as if she was envious of the bird that could cross mountains and rivers and go wherever she wanted. Haven't you turned off the lights yet, dear? Mrs. Granger's voice sounded again. Close it now, Mum, Hermione said as she turned off the light in the room. Then she climbed into her little bed. However, she quickly turned over and picked up the letter she had just received. With her other hand, she touched the hairpin on her head. She tapped it twice with her fingers, and a soft white light lit up in the room. After adjusting the light to a very low brightness, Hermione read the letter again. As the words were narrated, she seemed to be experiencing the life of the magic school with the boy. Chapter 16. Dear Hermione, I haven't seen them for a long time, and I miss them very much. I also miss Uncle David and Aunt Jenny very much. Before I left, I promised to write you a letter, and I did buy an owl that could deliver letters. His name is Trig, and you should have seen it. However, after school started, life was really a bit busy, and I just came to school, so I didn't have much valuable things to say to you. So I put off writing this letter until today. I hope you won't be angry. Seeing this, Hermione thought to herself again. I am indeed very angry, but for the sake of your sincere apology, I forgive you. Speaking of this great magic school, in addition to giving people a very spectacular feeling, it also gives me a headache because it is so big. There are 200 to 300 stairs alone, and some stairs are often changed. The location may be upward today, but it may be downward tomorrow, or it may be impossible to walk at all. This makes me often get lost, and because of this, Elvis and I almost missed breakfast several times. By the way, Elvis is my roommate, and I have 3 other roommates named Wilson, Jimmy, and Burke. As for their surnames, I heard that they all have a long history and are related to the Holy 28 families. However, in this era, talking about blood is obviously a very outdated idea. We just use it as a fun conversation piece. Just like when I told them that Qin was the first great unified dynasty in China, I only used my last name. To make an interesting connection, it does not mean that I am actually a descendant of that dynasty. The four of them are all good people, friendly and lively. When you come here to go to school next year, I will definitely introduce you to them. I believe you will also be willing to make friends with them. Hermione. I don't know how you would introduce me. Are you also a roommate? Haha. I forgot to mention that I am now in Gryffindor House, one of the 4 houses of Hogwarts School. The logo of the house is a lion, which represents calmness and courage. I have a hunch that if you come, you should also I will be assigned here. In this case, I will be your direct senior. The other 3 houses of the school are Slytherin, Ravenclaw, and Hufflepuff. Due to the certain competitive relationship between the various houses, people from Slytherin will provoke us from time to time. Of course, they don't dare to do anything extraordinary. They just say some stupid things or make some stupid expressions. From this point of view, students in magic schools are actually not much different from the Muggle world. Regarding the dormitory area of the college, since I am a boy, I can't describe to you what the girls' dormitory is like, but I heard that it is much better than the boys' dormitory. At least it is equipped with a large wardrobe and dressing table. Of course, the boys' dormitory is the demand for these 2 things is not very big, and Jimmy and the others said they were not envious at all. I can only tell you that the Gryffindor common rest area is quite nice, with a warm decoration and a big fireplace. We can chat and drink tea here when you come. Seeing this, Hermione paused for a moment, imagining the scene of sitting next to the fireplace talking to someone, and couldn't help but raise the corners of her mouth slightly. At Hogwarts, the most important thing for us is of course to take various magic classes. You should know the names of these classes, mainly herbology, potions, transfiguration, charms, flying, history of magic, and dark arts. As for the magical defense class, since there are many courses, I want to experience each class before introducing it to you. This is one of the reasons why I have delayed writing to you for so long. Hermione, there is absolutely no need to wait. You can write one more letter. The herbal medicine class is very interesting. The teacher is Professor Sprout. She is also the dean of Hufflepuff. She is a very nice person. The most important thing is that she has a lot of magic plants, and some of them are very valuable. I plan to have a good time with her, communicate, and see if you can get some good stuff from her to sell in Diagon Alley. Of course, I haven't told her my thoughts yet. Advertisement. Only now do I realize what it means to stump a hero with 1 galleon. In the magical world, you have to be rich, otherwise I can't even afford a fancy broomstick. The most important thing is that I can't afford it. I want to buy you one, and pray that I can save enough money while you are in school. P.S. The currency of the Muggle world is difficult to use in the magical world, and only a very small amount of exchange is allowed. The flying lesson was what I was most looking forward to. The teacher was Mrs. Hooch. She looked very cool. However, when I asked if I could change the broom into a sword, she looked at me like I was a fool, which made me feel that her thinking is actually quite rigid and lacks sufficient innovative spirit. I actually don't object to flying on a broomstick. I just thought it would be better to have more choices. The history of magic class is lackluster. The teacher is the ghost Professor Binns. Many people are drowsy after listening to this class. I guess you are the only one who can persevere. The teacher of the Transfiguration class is Professor McGonagall, the dean of our college. We are currently taking a junior Transfiguration class. The goal is to turn a small animal into a small object. This is quite difficult. It was the first time I turned a snail into rubber. However, that the eraser was very hard, and there was no way to erase the pencil's writing. The teacher of the Charms class is Professor Flitwick. He told us that as long as we recite the spell accurately and wave the wand, we can successfully cast the spell. This sounds like we can learn it as long as we have a mouth and hands. However, in fact, the situation is frequently, there were several magic explosions in the classroom. It is really difficult to pronounce those awkward curses accurately. I suspect that spells are some kind of language to communicate with the gods. When you pronounce them with your heart, you are actually talking to the gods, or communicating with some kind of power. However, Professor Flitwick told me not to speculate blindly. He said that it would not be too late for me to think about such profound issues until I learn more deeply. Now comes the highlight, defense against the dark arts. The teacher of this course is Professor Stephen Swinton. He really likes to scare people. He often shows the students some bloody pictures caused by black magic or dark creatures, and even puts them in front of you. We already have some students in this class. I was so scared that I vomited. Many people would not be able to eat after taking this course, but I was a little better and my appetite was not affected. However, I don't think you will let him teach. because I heard that he is a restless person who likes to travel around. When this school year is over, he will resign and go to the Himalayas to search for the remains of ancient wizards. This is a very good hobby. If I have money, I would also like to travel around the world to look for some magical creatures or visit ancient ruins. If you are willing, I can take you with me. Hermione, traveling around the world sounds like a very good idea. Considering your sincere invitation, I can consider it. Potions is the class I want to tell you the most. The teacher of this class is Professor Severus Snape. He is a person who you will think is difficult to get along with just by looking at him. However, he is actually quite kind at heart. Of course, I'm not saying that taking his class is easy. Potions class requires two kinds of knowledge. One is to know the raw materials of these potions, and the other is to have a full understanding of potion formulas and preparation methods, and Professor Snape often asks questions about certain medicines without warning. I was called once, and then 1 point was deducted for giving a random answer. This made me a little embarrassed, but I couldn't refute it. I believe that if it were you, you would definitely master that knowledge quickly. However, I would like to remind you that you must not raise your hands to answer questions so enthusiastically in his class, because he is a very awkward person. If you are too positive, he will not let you answer questions, and will even say some sarcastic words. Of course, I believe the purpose of his words is to prevent you from becoming arrogant and complacent because you know too much. But what he said is really unpleasant. I hope you don't pay too much attention to it. Overall, these courses are actually quite interesting, and I believe you will adapt to them quickly. Having said so much, I can barely keep writing for 2 pages, so let's stop here first. That's about it for campus life. If there is anything interesting in the future, I will write to you again. By the way, when I was in Diagon Alley, I saw a very nice hairpin, the one in the envelope. At that time, I thought it would be very beautiful when you put it on, so I bought it. I hope you like it. As a reminder, there is another interesting thing about this hairpin. That is, if you tap the eye position of the pattern twice with your finger, it will emit bright light, and you can rotate it to adjust the brightness. Finally, I wish the lovely Hermione happiness every day, and I wish Uncle David and Aunt Jenny all the best. Love you, Qin. Chapter 17. During breakfast, owls flew into the hall of the auditorium, delivering packages and letters to each recipient. Jimmy received a bag of candies that his mother had given him to make friends with, and he shared them with people he knew at the dinner table. Qin Yu received a pink envelope with a flower pattern. As soon as he took the envelope in his hand, his roommate and several close classmates all cast curious glances. It must have been written by a girl. Wilson raised his eyebrows and said meaningfully, "Wow, what kind of girl is she?" Jimmy's eyes lit up, and he also said, "I don't know where these little brats come from with such a strong desire to gossip." Qin Yu muttered secretly, "She is indeed a girl. She is very cute and has a pair of beautiful eyes. As for what she looks like specifically, you will see it when she comes to Hogwarts next year." Qin Yu briefly told these curious babies, "She also comes here to go to school? What's your relationship with her? How did you meet?" Several people became more curious now, asking all kinds of questions. Qin Yu ignored them all, hurriedly stuffed a few mouthfuls of ham bread into his mouth, drank a glass of juice, picked up the letter, patted his butt, and left. A few people were left sitting at the dining table, talking among themselves. After leaving the auditorium, Qin Yu finally came to a quiet flower bed and found a bench to sit down. When the envelope was opened, Qin Yu immediately smelled a nice floral fragrance. Just when he was wondering if it was some girly deodorant from Hermione, he saw those flowers and leaves. This made Qin Yu couldn't help but feel funny at his far-fetched imagination. Mainly, after being away from Granger's house for so long, he missed the faint smell of shampoo and shower gel when Hermione was near him. Putting away these thoughts, Qin Yu took out the pages of letter paper inside, unfolded them, and read them carefully. The content of the letter written by Hermione is similar in structure to Qin Yu's letter. At the beginning, Hermione first expressed the meaning of, "I don't miss you very much. I just think about you occasionally," in very careful words. Then, he talked about what has happened since the beginning of school. "I have already learned a lot of things in advance, so the content of the class is a bit boring, and the teacher's questions are also very simple, not too difficult. I am the only one who got full marks in the class exam. Mainly these are the remarks made by academics." Also speaking of, several female classmates were very unfriendly to her, but because someone was hung from a tree last time, they didn't dare to do anything excessive. Then, Hermione expressed her longing for the courses described by Qin Yu. "I really want September next year to come soon, so that I can go to those magic classes like you," she wrote in the letter. As for life, she wrote about her parents taking her out to play, and said, Mom and Dad miss you very much. No matter where they go to play, they will always subconsciously say that it would be great if Qin was here. Next, I will write some trivial things, such as there are bugs in the room where Qin Yu lives. Yesterday, Mrs. Granger made Qin Yu's favorite beef brisket with potatoes. She wanted to raise a kitten, but her parents did not agree. It seems that he has grown 2 centimeters taller and will soon catch up with Qin Yu, and so on. At the end of the letter, Hermione wrote, "When I go out to play with my parents or pass by certain places, I will pick some flowers or a leaf and then stuff them all into the envelope. In this case, you are also equivalent to I've been to these places together." At the end, classmate Hermione told Qin Yu in extremely serious words that he must not write to her after too long because she has fallen in love with Trig. "Yes, Trig and I have become good friends, so you have to fly him over often. I will prepare more food for him in advance," Hermione emphasized. Looking at the last signature of "Love you, Hermione," Qin Yu couldn't help but put the pages of letter paper to his nose and smell it. He wanted to find a hint of familiar flavor in the fragrance of flowers, plants, and leaves. However, the ink fragrance of the letter paper was too strong, carrying the short and long feelings of the paper flying across the mountains and seas. The familiar smell he was looking for was hidden in it, leisurely and ethereal and difficult to distinguish. In the past, carriages and horses were slow and letters were far away. Looking at those thin pages of letter paper, Qin Yu suddenly thought of this sentence. Then, he carefully put away the letter and the flowers, plants, and leaves, and walked towards the classroom. Today's content is very simple, so most of you have successfully prepared this chilblain decoction. However, you must remember that this is not because you have any magic potion talent, but because you do not have it. It's just too bad. Professor Snape slowly said venomous words after the course ended. Advertisement Qin Yu was already very accustomed to Old C's style of speaking. He took the lead and said, "Thank you, Professor Snape, for your compliment." Then, quite a few students started to boo. Snape couldn't help but rolled his eyes and looked at Qin Yu, feeling that this child was indeed quite noisy. "Professor, there are still 10 minutes until get out of class ends. Why don't you teach us something extracurricular?" Qin Yu said excitedly, without any sense of being disliked. "Oh, what do you want to learn?" Professor Snape said calmly. "Is there any spell that can fix the leaves and make them into cards or bookmarks?" Qin Yu described his request. Professor Snape fell into a daze upon hearing this. "Well, that's not surprising. That's what he looks like when he doesn't talk." "No? Or do you not understand the magic spell in this area?" Qin Yu said disappointedly. Professor Snape said nothing, but waved his wand in the air along a certain trajectory while chanting, "Carish's Tatoes." With a flash of white light, a leaf on Qin Yu's table that was originally used to prepare the decoction instantly turned into a green bookmark, and the bookmark happened to be inlaid with that leaf. What a beautiful bookmark! I want it so much. Professor Snape, your spell is so powerful. Professor, can you teach us? I really want to learn it. Looking at the leaf bookmark in Qin Yu's hand, the students' voices of envy and desire suddenly rang out in the classroom. This is much more interesting than mixing potions, especially girls who have no resistance to these gadgets. Quiet, Snape said, raising his voice. The noisy sound in the classroom suddenly stopped. Snape said calmly, "These are all small tricks. Since I have time today, I will teach you. However, I will only teach you once. If you can't learn it, you can choose to give up. It means you are not suitable to learn this spell." Then, he stopped talking nonsense and began to teach the students the spell called Live is Solid. C taught exactly what he said, and he taught once and for all. After explaining the trajectory of the magic spell and the pronunciation of the spell, he left it alone and let the students practice freely. As for Qin Yu, when he used the Living is Solid curse for the first time, he directly blasted a hole in the table. Snape happened to be passing by and threw a repairing charm to help him fill the hole. After several experiments, Qin Yu finally found the feeling and controlled the strength. Chrysastatheus. The magic wand waved down, white light flashed, and a leaf bookmark was completed. Qin Yu raised the bookmark with a sense of accomplishment and subconsciously looked for Professor Snape, thinking that he could praise himself. After all, he was the first to learn it. Then, he saw that Snape had a bookmark in his hand, and he was looking at the bookmark in a daze. Following Snape's gaze, Qin Yu saw a blooming lily inlaid on the bookmark. Lily is Lily, Lily. Seeing this scene, Qin Yu couldn't help but sigh softly, thinking to himself that this old boy was thinking about someone else's wife again. A him? No, it's a confidant. Thinking of this, Qin Yu decided not to disturb Snape anymore and let him think about his own thoughts. Today is Friday, and there are no classes in the afternoon. Qin Yu went to the Gryffindor common room after lunch. Then, he took out the flowers, plants, and leaves sent by Hermione and used the living as solid curse one by one. After the bookmarks were completed one by one and inserted into different textbooks, Qin Yu nodded with satisfaction. Then, just as he returned to his dormitory, an owl flew in from the window and threw him a letter. The letter was written by Hagrid. The content was to invite Qin Yu to his place for tea at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. After reading the letter, Qin Yu thought to himself, what did Uncle ask me to do? Do I have to pay back the money so soon? Chapter 18. Uncle Hagrid, how much did you sell a bag of unicorn hair for? Qin Yu suppressed his emotions that were about to lose control and squeezed out these words through his teeth. He only felt that the fire in his heart was rising up, straight to his forehead. Qin Yu was right. Hagrid asked him to come over for tea with the purpose of repaying the money, not to continue borrowing money. However, the money from Hagrid made Qin Yu very thin. A bag of 2 galleons, what's wrong? Hagrid said in confusion. He instinctively felt that the little boy in front of him might be a little unhappy. However, he paid back the money today. Although he only paid back part of the money, the child should also be happy, right? So, Hagrid is confused. What's wrong? You still ask what's wrong. Qin Yu felt that he was already a little angry. He took a sip of the tea on the table, moistened his dry throat, and said in as calm a tone as possible. Did you know that a small bag of unicorn hair in Diagon Alley costs 10 galleons? It seems. That's what happened. Hagrid scratched his head and said, Then you sold 2 galleons to profiteers in Hogsmeade? Qin Yu growled weakly. Mainly because I thought it was convenient to sell it to them, and they also took some other things, otherwise I wouldn't be able to get the 50 galleons to pay you back. Hagrid said his reasons. I'm not in a hurry to ask you to pay back the money. Rather than you paying back the money later, I don't want to see you selling off what you have worked so hard to save. Qin Yu said sadly. As a typical Taurus, he does value money, but he values more that he or his friends will not suffer such a big loss in money. Suffering a loss is what a Taurus hates the most. Well, I used to sell it to him like this, and it's actually not bad. Hagrid said softly. It's okay. Qin Yu asked with wide eyes and a frown. No, this is not good. Hagrid quickly changed his words. For some reason, Hagrid felt that it was better to follow the child's words at this time. Otherwise, he might really explode on the spot. Seeing Hagrid like this, Qin Yu also knew that his reaction was a little too big, so he said apologetically, Sorry, Hagrid, I was a little excited just now, but I am really worried for you. How could you sell such a precious thing casually? Well, they are actually just some animal hair, not very precious, very precious. They are all precious. However, you also know that I am not good at doing business with people. Hagrid sighed helplessly at the end. Hagrid is right about this. Although he usually collects fur, eggshells, sheds, and other things from magical animals, he doesn't do it as a business. He just saves a lot and takes it to Hogsmeade. Go to the village to sell it, and then exchange some money for a cup of butterbeer at the Pig's Head Bar, or go to the Honeyduke's candy shop to buy some chocolates, milk fudge, and other things. This, of course, has a lot to do with his personality, because he has not been very good at dealing with people since he was a child. This is one of the reasons why he likes animals. I was just about to tell you about this. I want to be the sole agent for the ancillary products of the magical creatures you feed. What do you think? Qin Yu looked at Hagrid with a frank and eager look. Authority? Hagrid repeated the phrase with some confusion. Yes, I will be responsible for selling your things. We will share the money we make in proportion. I guarantee you will make more than selling them as junk. Qin Yu explained to Hagrid in simple language. Facing such an 11-year-old child, Hagrid didn't know if it was an illusion, but Hagrid actually felt that the tone of the other person's words and actions seemed to be more mature and serious than his own. Sounds good. Hagrid immediately showed great interest in the idea. The main thing is that no one has told him about this before. Those wizard children from wealthy families naturally disdain making money, while those without money are immersed in learning magic. The most important thing is, which student has a mature business acumen like Qin Yu? He is not good at doing business, and there is no one to help him, which means that Hagrid, a magical animal breeder with unlimited potential, is still a pauper. It can be said that you are sitting on a golden mountain, but eating chaffy vegetables. Then, Qin Yu's appearance at this time just filled such a vacancy. Moreover, Hagrid thought of Qin Yu's help in bargaining for him before, and felt that he was very smart and reliable. After briefly asking how she should cooperate, After receiving Qin Yu's answer of, just collect things as before, Hagrid readily agreed to Qin Yu's suggestion and simply let him do what he wanted. Fully authorized agent. Qin Yu didn't expect that the cooperation intention could be negotiated so easily, and he was somewhat surprised. However, he then thought about it. Uncle Han treated people with sincerity and must have believed that he had made the decision so quickly. This made Qin Yu feel a great sense of responsibility. Hagrid, don't worry, I will definitely make us rich, Qin Yu solemnly promised. Haha, I don't dare to think about getting rich. As long as it allows me to have money to buy the magical animals I want to buy, it will be fine, Hagrid said with a naive smile. Now that the cooperation intention has been reached, Qin Yu converted the remaining debt of 185 galleons into early purchasing fees and agency fees. This made Hagrid a little overjoyed. After all, he was debt-free. Advertisement. After discussing some details such as the settlement cycle, Qin Yu suggested that Hagrid find some helpers. This would make it easier to classify and properly store the collected items. Hagrid thought it made sense and readily agreed. So, Qin Yu used a cloud-piercing arrow, an owl, to summon brothers George and Fred. Why these two troublemakers? Last year, I had a headache to prevent them from causing trouble in the Forbidden Forest, Hagrid said with disgust after seeing the Weasley twins rushing over. Luo, who told you not to let us go to play? Yes, the school only has such a small area. Why don't you let us go to the Forbidden Forest? The two brothers said lazily. Qin Yu quickly stopped the two parties before the conflict intensified and explained the purpose of calling them to the Weasley brothers. You just let us do this? Didn't your letter say that you have important business matters to discuss? George and Fred said with some disappointment. The owl had just sent them a letter. They thought Qin Yu had some important business plan to announce, so they ran over. Only when they arrived did they realize that they were asked to take care of animals, collect animal hair, etc. menial work. Of course, Qin Yu couldn't fool the twin brothers with just a few words. So, Qin Yu asked seriously, what do you think is the most important thing in business? What a great idea. Just like your shared broomstick. George was thinking about the novel business model Qin Yu mentioned. Strong funds. Without financial support, no matter how good the idea is, it will be difficult to realize it. Fred did not agree with his brother this time. Qin Yu listened, nodded, and said, the two things you mentioned are indeed very important. Then, amid the confused expressions of the two brothers, he continued, however, I think the most important thing is talent. Talents with business acumen like you. These words made the two brothers George and Fred very happy, and they both looked over at Hagrid, hoping that this stupid uncle would also hear Qin Yu's affirmation of them. However, you are not yet considered a mature and qualified business talent. Qin Yu's words took another turn. Why not? The two brothers asked in unison. Because you still lack a certain amount of experience. A successful businessman cannot be born with business skills. Instead, he accumulates experience, broadens his horizons, and accumulates contacts through small things. So, don't look at Hagrid. The things on the side are just some menial work of collecting magical animal ancillary products. But these things can make you grow up quickly, Qin Yu said slowly. Seeing that the two brothers were still thinking about it, he simply continued. We took over Hagrid's full agency this time, firstly to train the team, and secondly to accumulate contacts. Think about it. If you can be well qualified for these items, if you collect, organize, and buy and sell, you will definitely have experience doing similar things in the future. More importantly, you will deal with a variety of customers. They may be the owners of wand shops, magic stores, and magic bookstores. It may also be a magic researcher or a manager of a large family. These people will become our potential partners in the future. Hearing this, George and Fred's eyes gradually lit up. Qin Yu struck while the iron was hot and said in a bewitching voice, imagine that one day, you will be able to handle any difficult commercial work. Imagine again that one day, your friends and customers will be all over the UK and all over Europe, even the whole world. Then, at that time, what can't be done? What can't be done? Qin Yu's words were like a bomb, exploding in the hearts of George and Fred. They are not fools. On the contrary, they are very smart, especially when it comes to business. They have a keen sense of smell and a bold spirit of innovation. Now, after Qin Yu's guidance, they are like enlightenment. Their vision has been enlarged and their pattern has been opened. Yes, they need to constantly train themselves. Yes, they need to broaden their network. Once these two things are ready, they will be able to do many, many things. Until then, what can't be done? Until then, everything can be done. George and Fred looked at each other, and they both saw the fiery look in each other's eyes, and then they both looked at Qin Yu with their fiery gazes. Qin, are these two kids going crazy? They look so much like the animals in the Forbidden Forest. After George and Fred went to work happily, Hagrid lowered his head and whispered to Qin Yu worriedly. No, Hagrid, they are burning for their dreams. Qin Yu corrected. Oh, Hagrid nodded in understanding. Young, so good. Qin Yu sighed in his heart, then called Hagrid and went to serve his precious animals together. Then, that afternoon, Qin Yu set foot in the mysterious Forbidden Forest of Hogwarts for the first time. Chapter 19. In the evening, the sun sets. Bathed in the afterglow of the setting sun, a magical animal with a snow-white body and a spiral horn on its head slowly approached the edge of the Forbidden Forest. This is an adult unicorn. After Hagrid saw it, he called out a name, and the noble creature snorted slightly in response. Qin Yu, brothers Fred and George on the side were all stunned. There is a saying that when Qin Yu first saw this magical creature, his level of wonder was no less than that of the Weasley brothers, even if he was born 2 generations ago. Just for this unicorn, Qin Yu felt that coming to this magical world was worth it. Hermione. Huh? I'll give you another chance and talk it through. Hagrid, how should we get along with him? Qin Yu asked Hagrid for advice. Brothers George and Fred also cast eager glances at Hagrid. No way. Who can resist the charm of a unicorn? Well, probably except Tom without a nose. You can feed her carrots. You have to wash them well and dry them carefully, otherwise she won't take a bite. Hagrid said this and added at the end, by the way, she is a Mississippi carrot. Qin Yu looked at the single horn on the top of the unicorn's head and thought to himself, is this the way of complimenting the shape with the shape? Despite the complaints, he hurriedly caught up with the twin brothers who had already rushed back to Hagrid's hut to get carrots. As the saying goes, a man will remain a boy until he dies, not to mention that he is a boy now. So naturally, he doesn't want to miss this opportunity to get along with the unicorn. The 3 of them found a few carrots from Hagrid's food warehouse. According to his instructions, they washed them and dried them carefully with towels, just like those otakus in previous lives who wiped their favorite figurines. Then, 3 watery carrots came in front of the unicorn. After taking a critical look at the 3 carrots, the unicorn chewed them all like a sea king. Hey, she ate my D***K first, Fred said happily. Hutue, lick the dog. Qin Yu and George cast disdainful glances at him at the same time. Then they all quickly took out another carrot and moved it in front of the unicorn. After successfully getting close to the unicorn Kelly with food, Qin Yu could finally gently stroke her back hair. Note, there is no way to distinguish gender by listening to names like Kelly and Kelly. It feels really good, as smooth as touching silk. George and Fred, on the other hand, had already taken out the various gadgets they carried with them and began to make the unicorn happy. The unicorn stood there proudly and watched quietly, his eyes gradually softened, as if with a slight smile. This made the twin brothers even more excited, wishing they could transform themselves into circus jugglers and present more exciting shows to the unicorns. I didn't expect that besides making trouble, the 2 of them are also good at making animals happy, Hagrid said to Qin Yu, who finally stopped surrounding the unicorn. A person's ability and talent, if used in the right place, will produce huge value. Qin Yu said something he had read in a book in his previous life. That's right. I'm beginning to think they are of some use. As Hagrid said this, a flying water bomb suddenly hit him, and then exploded in front of his face, making his face full of water and his beard soaked. Wiping his face hard, Hagrid said angrily. But I still don't like them both. I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh at you, Qin Yu said while holding back his laughter. Hagrid, this was an accident. I'm really sorry. George quickly raised his hands to apologize. Yes, we didn't mean to do it. Hagrid, please don't drive us away. Fred felt that he had fallen in love with Kelly and was really reluctant to leave. Facing the 2 troublemakers who became so polite, Hagrid could not lose his temper for a moment, so he could only say seriously, if you hit me again next time, I will throw you directly into the Black Lake. The 2 brothers immediately said they would pay attention and continued to play with the unicorn. After the unicorn had eaten and drank enough, and watched the human acrobatics for a while, it returned to the depths of the Forbidden Forest with elegant steps, leaving George and Fred feeling sad behind it. Let's go back. You haven't had dinner yet, so I'll make you something to eat. Hagrid called the 3 children back to the cabin. Advertisement. Okay. Thank you, Hagrid. Qin Yu expressed his gratitude to Hagrid for the dinner invitation. However, Soon, Qin Yu and the Weasley brothers turned green when faced with the pot of dark food cooked by Uncle Han. I suddenly remembered that I forgot to put away the laundry. Goodbye, Hagrid. Goodbye, Fred and George. Qin Yu stood up and said solemnly. After George and Fred glanced at this guy, they immediately stood up and said, "We have something to do. Let's go first." I made a lot of chowder and sour soup porridge. Why don't you leave before you finish eating?" Hagrid said with some surprise. "So, this thing is called chowder and sour soup porridge?" "No, thank you for your kind invitation. However, I'm very sorry. I think it's going to rain. I have to go back and collect my clothes quickly," Qin Yu said seriously. "Damn it. It's a sunny day with a bright moon and few stars. How can it rain?" This sentence rose in George and Fred's minds at the same time. Yes, it's going to rain. Our windows are all closed, right, George?" "That's right, Fred." After the three of them said this, they pushed the door open and left quickly, leaving Hagrid alone facing his pot of sour soup and porridge. However, just when Qin Yu and the others had just left Hagrid's hut, they suddenly heard several shrill neighing sounds. This made them stop in their tracks. Bang! The wooden door of the hut was suddenly opened by Hagrid. "What's wrong, Hagrid?" Qin Yu asked loudly. "It's Kelly. I don't know what happened," Hagrid said with a frown. When Qin Yu heard this, his heart suddenly trembled, and he thought to himself, could it be that Tom without a nose had come early? Is this kid so careless about talking about it? Without allowing him to think too much, Hagrid had already taken the lead and ran towards the direction of the Forbidden Forest. Qin Yu naturally followed closely behind, and George and Fred were also concerned about the safety of the unicorn, so they also ran over. Soon, Hagrid found the unicorn. Seeing that nothing was wrong with her, Qin Yu breathed a sigh of relief, knowing that it was a false alarm. However, the originally elegant unicorn now had a panicked look in his eyes, and he kept pacing, looking very uneasy. Hagrid stepped forward and communicated in a language that only he and the unicorn could understand. Qin Yu, George, and Fred soon knew what happened. "Anna is lost," Hagrid said to the three of them with a solemn expression. "Who is Anna?" Qin Yu asked with a frown. "It's Kelly's child, a little golden unicorn, just 1 year old," Hagrid introduced. The child was lost. No wonder the unicorn was so anxious. Qin Yu and the others instantly understood the whole story. "Then let's go look for him separately," Qin Yu suggested. "No, the Forbidden Forest is too dangerous. I'd better go find it myself." Hagrid stopped Qin Yu. "You have to find out when. Let's do this. George, Fred, and I will give you a rough outline of the unicorn's range of activities so that we can have a clear target," Qin Yu said calmly. George and Fred nodded sharply. Seeing his persistence and the fact that a group of 3 did increase the safety factor a lot, Hagrid agreed to Qin Yu's proposal and told them the areas where unicorns often hang out. "Don't go anywhere else casually," Hagrid warned before leaving. "Okay, we get it." Qin Yu gave him a reassuring look. Then, the 4 people divided into 2 groups and searched in different directions. However, Qin Yu still underestimated the complexity of the terrain of the Forbidden Forest. He originally conducted a blanket search with George and Fred at a certain distance so that each other could see each other's lights. However, after walking a certain distance, Qin Yu discovered that the 2 lights around him had disappeared at some point. After calling George and Fred's names several times, he didn't get any response. "Damn, am I lost?" Qin Yu thought to himself. Chapter 20. Who can tell me what to do if I get lost in the Forbidden Forest? Wait online. It's very urgent. Qin Yu thought about these irrelevant words in his mind. He actually didn't know whether he was lost or whether George and Fred were lost. However, the result is the same. That is, he is the only one left now. He didn't dare to shout their names too loudly. After all, this was the Forbidden Forest. What if some ferocious beasts were attracted? Qin Yu looked at the simple map given by Hagrid in his hand, then looked up blankly at the trees and strange rocks around him, and then put away the rag with a sigh. He had to admit that he had been a little impulsive just now, thinking that the Forbidden Forest was not a big problem. After all, Harry had been wandering in the Forbidden Forest since he was very young. So, empiricism kills people, so be careful in the magical world. Qin Yu muttered while walking in the black forest of Longdong, 1 foot deep and 1 foot shallow. He no longer knew where he was at this time, and could only rely on the memory and sense of direction in his mind to identify the direction. However, this was not very reliable, and the surrounding environment became increasingly unfamiliar. Gradually, he became a little impatient in the darkness, especially when there are strange sounds or dark shadows of animals coming from time to time. Just when Qin Yu felt a little hairy in his heart, the power in his body that had not moved for many days became ready to move. Finally, at a certain moment, driven by Qin Yu's instinct, the power surged to his forehead. Qin Yu immediately saw the things around him clearly and heard sounds far away. This experience gave Qin Yu a feeling that he had become very powerful. With the blessing of that power, his vision began to spread, and his hearing began to expand. He can't see rough outlines hundreds of meters and several kilometers away, and can also hear sounds hundreds of meters and several kilometers away. Then, he easily captured the panicked figures of George and Fred. He felt happy and was about to go that way when he heard a faint neighing sound again. This sound is very similar to the cry of Unicorn Kelly, but it is much more immature. That's right, it should be Anna the little unicorn. At this time, Qin Yu, with the blessing of this suspected power of Obscurus, became bolder. Since he had found the little unicorn, there was no reason to let it go. So, he carefully identified the direction where the sound came from and ran there quickly. Soon, he came to a cave, and the little unicorn's voice became clearer and clearer. Qin Yu felt happy and knew that he had found the right place. When he walked into the cave to take a look, he saw a smaller unicorn that was all golden. And this little unicorn was tied to the ground and struggling. "Anna, is that you?" Qin Yu shouted. Hearing this call, the little unicorn neighed louder. Obviously, she was Anna. Qin Yu quickly stepped forward to help. After getting closer, he discovered that the things tied up with the little unicorn were layers of white silk threads. After seeing clearly what it was, Qin Yu suddenly thought of a possibility. "Who is it?" "You are not Hagrid." An old voice sounded in the cave. Qin Yu looked around and saw that it was a spider bigger than a carriage. It is covered with black hair, has 8 eyes, 8 legs, and 2 huge chelicerae like giant pincers. It's the acromantula. Qin Yu was in a hurry and didn't pay much attention. He didn't expect that this cave turned out to be the home of the acromantula. "Aragog," Qin Yu said with a trembling voice. "Oh, it seems you know that Hagrid told you about me," the acromantula said slowly. "Yes, I am Hagrid's friend," Qin Yu said quickly. "Advertisement, I see. Then what are you doing here?" the acromantula asked. "I lost," Qin Yu said half-truthfully. "Well, that's really a pity," the acromantula said quietly. Qin Yu knew what the regret in its mouth meant. "It's not that I regret that Qin Yu got lost, but that Qin Yu died here today and died young." Sure enough, dense black shadows moved quickly towards Qin Yu from all over the cave, making rustling sounds. "Can you ask your descendants to let me go?" Qin Yu said to Aragog with a sense of luck. "Sorry, although I promised Hagrid not to hurt anyone, I can't restrain my children and my children's children. So, do you have any last words for Hagrid?" The 8-eyed spider said sadly. "Damn it, I'll leave you alone." Qin Yu couldn't help but cursed. The 8-eyed spider didn't understand the Mandarin he used, but it was too lazy to understand. Swish, swish. The sound is getting closer. Qin Yu could see the black spider eyes and the pairs of terrifying claws. The little unicorn also felt the approaching crisis, lying on the ground and tapping its hooves more and more uneasily. The spider swarm moved closer and surrounded the two prey. They didn't have any attack plan, and a few spiders in the front rushed towards Qin Yu. Wingardium Leviosa. At the critical moment, Qin Yu quickly waved his wand and chanted the hovering spell. The spiders that attacked him immediately floated in the air. However, more spiders rushed over from behind. Qin Yu, who was in a hurry, waved his wand again, and Petrificus totalis came. The second wave of spiders instantly froze and could not move. Seeing that this spell was easier to use, Qin Yu used it several times to turn everything into stone. However, it was difficult for 2 fists to defeat 4 hands, not to mention that each of the opponents had 8 legs, and they were so densely packed that he didn't know how many there were. Qin Yu soon couldn't stop him. Suddenly, a spider thread shot out of nowhere and wrapped around Qin Yu's wand. Qin Yu was unprepared and his wand was dragged away by the spider silk. Without the magic wand, Qin Yu's spells would naturally be useless, which made his situation even more dangerous. "Oh, that's all for today, right?" Qin Yu cursed in his mind. "What the hell is my fate?" Qin Yu felt like crying but had no tears left. Ding. Dear host, life is always full of surprises. You have encountered a life or death moment. At such a time, how should you get out of the dangerous situation? Please make the following choices. 1. Rely on your wisdom and courage. Try to escape from the 8-eyed spider group, and you will be rewarded with 100,000 gold galleons. 2. Use the power of the Obscurus to crush the 8-eyed spider swarm with absolute strength. and be rewarded with the ability to summon the Room of Requirement. A familiar voice sounded in Qin Yu's mind. The system appeared at the right time. It's already this time. I have to rely on Lao Shizi's wisdom and courage to escape. I've escaped a long time ago, and you're the one talking about it. Qin Yu complained crazily in his heart. However, he obviously didn't have much time. Choose 2. Qin Yu quickly had this thought in his mind. Ding. Host, you have chosen to use the power of Obscurus. Next, please hand yourself over to Obscurus. What does it mean to hand oneself over to Imoran? Qin Yu thought doubtfully in his heart. However, he couldn't allow him to think too much. A powerful force suddenly surged out from nowhere, and then, the overwhelming darkness swallowed up his consciousness. Before he completely lost consciousness, he seemed to hear crazy laughter and shrill screams. Damn, even though it's a bit embarrassing, it still feels weird. As the last thought passed through his mind, Qin Yu's consciousness fell into endless void. Chapter 21. When that strong wave of magic came from the direction of the Forbidden Forest, Dumbledore, who was reading in the principal's office, suddenly raised his head. Soon, there was a knock on his door, and it was Professor McGonagall. Professor Dumbledore, can it be that child? Professor McGonagall asked in the first sentence. When Dumbledore heard this, he sighed and said, Minerva, your hunch should be right. It seems to be that child. Then let's go take a look quickly. Professor McGonagall said worriedly. Yeah, I'm about to go over. Dumbledore nodded and said. At this moment, Professor Swinton and Professor Snape arrived almost at the same time, with equally solemn expressions, but the latter kept a cold face, and his other emotions were much covered up. Let's go and take a look together. Dumbledore naturally guessed their purpose and said directly to the two of them. So, the 4 Hogwarts professors went to a place in the Forbidden Forest where a similar magical explosion occurred. Not long after, they brought the unconscious Qin Yu back to Hogwarts Castle and sent him to the school hospital for treatment and care by Madame Pomfrey. At the same time, somewhere in Egypt, this is a place that's 1 hour ahead of Hogwarts in terms of time zone. Naturally, it gets dark earlier here, and the night is darker. Under the moonlight, a pyramid stands quietly. If ordinary muggles passed by here, they would definitely see nothing but yellow sand, because this pyramid is shielded from the muggle world and only wizards can see it. At this time, several wizards were busy outside the pyramid, sorting out the recent harvest. Suddenly, several panicked little beasts emerged from the pyramid. They had black fur all over their bodies and protruding beaks like duck beaks. What happened to the Nifflers today? Why did they all run out when we asked them to hunt for treasure? A wizard with a short beard said in confusion. The Xiao in his mouth are those little black beasts, which are magical animals with a talent for treasure hunting. In the summer, they were particularly restless for a while, but they didn't look crazy like they do today. Another wizard also said. Among them, a young wizard caught a panicked sniff, held it in his arms and stroked its head to comfort it. Bill, what do you think the reason might be? The short-bearded wizard asked the young man. I don't know. According to the records in the ancient book of Gringotts Goblins, there should be no super forbidden spells here. What on earth scared the Nifflers? The young wizard also said with a solemn face. If Qin Yu were here, he would definitely recognize that this tanned young wizard was Bill Weasley, who had a double relationship with him. However, before these wizards could come up with any results from their discussion, a terrifying wave of power came from the depths of the pyramid. Immediately afterwards, they saw a ray of white light erupting from the center of the pyramid, shooting straight into the sky, and the light was so bright that it instantly overshadowed the bright moon in the sky. Immediately, the white light fell from high in the sky and sank somewhere to the southeast of them like a meteor. What on earth happened? After a long time, the short-bearded man said in shock. Let's report it to Gringotts and don't go into the pyramid for the time being, Bill said with some worry. That's right, we can't go in. Let's sort out the treasures that have been unlocked outside. Safety first, safety first. A wizard quickly agreed. Of course, everyone agreed to this proposal. After recalling the treasure hunter Xiao, they immediately moved the camp 2 kilometers away and waited for instructions from Gringotts. What Bill and other Gringotts cursebreakers didn't know was that at the same time that the pyramid they were exploring was making strange movements, there were also other places on the Tunguska River northwest of Lake Baikal in the Siberian forest, on the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean near the Strait of Gibraltar from Europe, and in the Himalayas. Similar energy fluctuations appeared on a mountain peak covered with snow all year round, and in the depths of the tropical jungle north of the Panama Canal, as well as pillars of light rising into the sky. Advertisement. This phenomenon was so eye-catching that it was naturally seen by the surrounding Muggles. The Muggle world immediately set off a wave of speculation and decryption. However, until many years later, these phenomena were still unsolved mysteries. Of course, what the Muggle world is like has little impact on the magical world. Somewhere between heaven and earth that no human being can perceive or understand. In the misty darkness, 5 groups of firelights of different colors lit up one after another. Gamma, Delta, Sigma, Pushi. Are only the 5 of us awake? A white fire made a sad voice. Yes, Alpha. They didn't wake up for various reasons, and I'm sure that Omicron is dead and will never wake up to fight alongside us again. A group of faint green firelight replied. Such words made the 5 groups of fire fall into silence. Comrades, do you still remember your mission? Bai Guang's voice sounded again. Of course you remember. Guard the world and eliminate the destroyers. The other 4 groups of fire responded in unison. Yes, since we have awakened in the ruins, it proves that the real destroyer has appeared. He may be very powerful, or he may be on the road to becoming stronger, but no matter what, we should shoulder the responsibility. It is your duty to eliminate the destroyers. Bai Guang said, raising his voice. Guard the world and never regret it. The other 4 groups of fire responded in unison again. Then, put away our sorrow, look for our respective representatives, and let them grow up quickly until the destroyer of the world is eliminated. Bai Guang said in a solemn voice. For the world. 4 groups of fire replied. For the world. Bai Guang also said. Then, the 5 fires suddenly went out. The entire space fell into misty darkness again. Qin Yu woke up from a long dream the next morning. In the dream, he seemed to have returned to his previous life and started working as a social worker from 9 to 5. However, one day, a little girl with brown hair kicked open his door and said loudly to him who was playing games, Qin, why didn't you go back for so long? Qin Yu looked at the girl and found that her features were vaguely familiar. Going back where? He asked subconsciously. Of course we are going back to the magical world, the little girl said with her eyes wide open. Only then did Qin Yu see clearly that she was Hermione, the girl who gave him an envelope of flowers, plants, and leaves. Okay, I'll go back right away. Qin Yu nodded fiercely and said. After saying this, he took the soft little hand that was stretched out. Then, I woke up after dreaming here. After he opened his eyes, he looked at the roof of the castle in a daze, and for a moment he didn't know where he was. However, he saw a familiar wand placed beside the bed. It was a wand made of silver willow wood. Tanzho held the silver-gray wand in his hand, and Qin Yu cast a hover spell on a teacup on the table. Looking at the teacup floating in the air, Qin Yu showed a reassuring smile. Qin, now is not a good time for you to use magic. A gentle middle-aged woman's voice sounded. Qin Yu looked back and found that it was Mrs. Pomfrey, the school nurse. Chapter 22. Qin Yu had no way of knowing the age of Madame Pomfrey, but she was already the school nurse here when Snape, James, and Lily went to school, so she was considered an old man at Hogwarts. Mrs. Pomfrey, how long have I slept? Qin Yu asked. 12 hours, Madame Pomfrey replied. In other words, I only slept for 1 night? Qin Yu confirmed the current time. What happened to me yesterday? He asked in confusion. How much do you remember? Madame Pomfrey did not answer his question immediately, but asked instead. Qin Yu frowned slightly, trying to recall what happened yesterday. After thinking for a while, he slowly said, I just remember going to find Anna, a little unicorn, who was lost. I was with George and Fred at first, but then we got separated while walking. Then, I heard the cry of the unicorn, and then I entered a cave. Anna was indeed there, but that cave was the nest of the acromantula, and Anna and I were hit by many 8-eyed spiders. The giant spiders besieged. I don't remember what happened next. Qin Yu told the truth about his experience, but he definitely couldn't talk about systemic things. After hearing this, Madame Pomfrey nodded and said, Professor Dumbledore found you in that cave. You fell into a coma at the time. When he sent you over, I gave you a comprehensive examination and found that I just fell asleep and nothing serious happened. As for what happened, you need to ask Professor Dumbledore. Qin Yu thought to himself that it seemed that he had not been harmed after giving his body to Mo Ran. At least, Madame Pomfrey could not see that he had been harmed. After Madame Pomfrey checked his body again and confirmed that there was nothing wrong, Qin Yu left the school hospital and went straight to Dumbledore's office. Knocking on the door of the principal's office, Qin Yu saw Old Ding with a white beard sitting behind his desk and Phoenix Fox squatting not far above him. At this time, Fox was already a little old. and his feathers seemed to have lost their luster. Feather? Qin Yu couldn't help but look at Fox a few more times, which caused Phoenix to look back with vigilance. Qin, I probably know your purpose of coming. Do you want to know what happened yesterday? Dumbledore said. Yes, Professor Dumbledore. I lost some memories yesterday. Qin Yu was brought back by Lao Deng's words and was no longer distracted. Then, he roughly repeated what he had just said to Madame Pomfrey. Qin, I'm sorry, I actually don't know much. I only know that there was a huge energy fluctuation in the depths of the Forbidden Forest last night, and I arrived there with Professor McGonagall, Professor Snape, and Professor Swinton. There, I found a little unicorn guarding you unconscious in the cave, and next to you were a pile of acromantula corpses. Then, I brought you back. Dang, Bulido told what he knew. It seems that I lost consciousness after being controlled by the Obscurus and killed the acromantula that besieged me. Although I escaped, the feeling of losing consciousness is really bad. Qin Yu secretly thought in his heart. If I guess correctly, your burst of energy came from Obscurus losing control. When you were in an extremely dangerous situation, Obscurus took control of your body out of survival instinct. In this case, I was very early. I've seen it on someone before. Professor Dumbledore said his analysis. Then how should I control this power? I'm actually a little scared. This is the first time I've encountered this kind of situation. In the past, I just lost control of my energy, but I didn't lose consciousness. Qin Yu said worriedly. You are afraid of it now, which proves that you have not lost yourself. This is a good phenomenon. Qin, don't worry, I have already communicated with several other professors, and we will find ways to help you control it, at least not let it get out of hand and cause an unmanageable situation, Dumbledore said with relief. Advertisement hearing this, Qin Yu felt warm in his heart and said, Thank you. Old Ding, Professor Dumbledore. It is our duty as teachers to prevent every child in the school from being harmed. Okay, Qin, you go back and have a good rest. A teacher will come to you alone in the next 2 days, Dumbledore said to Qin Yu. Okay, Professor Dumbledore, I feel relieved when you are here. Qin Yu said this and was about to get up and leave. However, he suddenly thought of something and asked Dumbledore again. By the way, Professor, you just said that those acromantulas are all dead, right? Yes, all adult acromantulas are dead, Dumbledore replied. What about Aragog? Qin Yu asked again. Of course Dumbledore knew Aragog's name. There's no trace either. After hearing Dumbledore's words, Qin Yu's eyes lit up. Professor, I won't disturb your work. Bye-bye, Professor, bye Fox. Qin Yu said goodbye to each other and hurriedly left the principal's office. After Qin Yu left, Dumbledore said to Phoenix, Fox, it seems he knows your name. Phoenix rolled his eyes and murmured, expressing that he didn't like the way the young man looked at him just now. After Qin Yu walked out of Dumbledore's office, he immediately went to Hagrid's hut and asked Hagrid's owl to notify brothers George and Fred. When the twins also arrived at Hagrid's hut, Qin Yu handed each of them a pair of Hagrid's special deerskin gloves and a large jar. What is this for? George held the gloves and jar, looking confused. Fred also cast a confused look. Of course I'm going to pick up the items dropped by the boss, Qin Yu said with an iron heart. These two children really have no vision for discovery. Before the two of them could ask, what are the items dropped by the boss? Hagrid interrupted and said, Qin is planning to collect the venom of the acromantula. After hearing this, the Weasley brothers' eyes instantly lit up. They had also been to the cave yesterday and saw the unconscious Qin Yu. However, at that time they were only concerned about Qin Yu's safety and did not pay much attention to the corpses of the acromantula. At this time, after Qin Yu and Hagrid woke them up, they finally realized that the corpses of those acromantulas were full of treasures. It is said that a pint of acromantula venom can be sold for 100 gold galleons, and it is still priceless. Is that so, Qin? Fred asked Qin Yu with eager eyes. Your price is outdated. Now it costs at least 120 galleons a pint, Qin Yu said with a smile. When he was in Diagon Alley, he also got a rough idea of the prices of certain items. Naturally, he noticed some familiar things like acromantula venom, phoenix feathers, and unicorn hair. Yes, because he knows that Hogwarts is rich in these things. After listening to Qin Yu's words, George and Fred were very motivated. So, each of the three children held a big jar and ran happily toward the Forbidden Forest. During this time, George and Fred couldn't help but cheer. Of course Hagrid followed them. He was carrying a sack with some tools in it and followed them calmly. Chapter 23. Looking at the messy spider nest, it took Qin Yu a long time before he asked leisurely, Is this all my doing? It should be. When we came, Professor Dumbledore and the others had already arrived early. At that time, we thought it was the teachers who saved you, but Professor Dumbledore said that this was because your magic was out of control, Fred said to Qin Yu. It's actually very common for young wizards to lose control of their magic, especially wizards from Muggle families. Without the guidance of adult wizards, they can easily cause magic to explode. However, you are really powerful this time, George said. There is more of a sense of worship in it. At first, George and Fred thought that Qin Yu simply had a very advanced business acumen, but they did not expect that Qin Yu was so awesome in terms of magical power, even though it was out of control. Seeing their reaction, Qin Yu glanced at Hagrid subconsciously. Uncle Han closed his mouth and spread his hands at him, which probably meant Dumbledore did not tell them the truth. Qin Yu thought for a while and roughly understood Laodang's intention. It was better to keep the obscurest affairs secret in a small area. Letting too many people know about it would be harmful and unhelpful. Okay, let's stop talking so much nonsense and let's get started. Guys, haven't you seen a lot of golden gallons waving to us? Qin Yu pointed at the acromantum that was full of caves. Spider Corpse said, "Ouch! Ho ho!" George and Fred let out excited shouts. Hagrid also seemed to be infected by the middle school boys and smiled happily. So, the four of them started picking up corpses in the acromantula's lair. They were picking up items dropped by these little bosses. As for the big boss Aragog, even Hagrid, the keeper of magical animals, doesn't know where it has gone. He was probably frightened and hid somewhere, Hagrid said to Qin Yu and the twins. This is one of the reasons why they dare to come in and pick up supplies. As for those little spiders that occasionally run in blankly, they don't need to be afraid at all. There is a small hole on the acromantula's calicary, right at this position. This small hole is where it sprays venom. When they use their calicary to clamp the target, they will quickly release the venom. To achieve the purpose of poisoning the target, be careful and be sure to wear gloves. Otherwise the venom will get on your skin, and your skin will rot, and you may even have a fever or coma. Hagrid pulled an acromantum, Spider's body, while explaining to Qin Yu and the three people present. Listening to his professional narration, both George and Fred showed admiration. Their impression of Hagrid has changed a lot, because they may not necessarily be able to learn the knowledge about these magical animals from books. However, Hagrid was able to talk about all the treasures in detail. Okay, Qin, you put a jar down there and I'll teach you how to get the venom, Hagrid commanded. Qin Yu quickly put his jar on the ground, while Hagrid used a knife to cut open some part of the skin on the head of the acromantula, and then he put his hand wearing deerskin gloves in and groped around. Made a popping sound. Hi, it's a bit disgusting, Qin Yu couldn't help but say. And George and Fred already had expressions of wanting to vomit, because the sound reminded them of the sound their mother made when grabbing minced meat with her hands. They swore that they would never treat their mother's steamed meatballs again in the future. Were interested in fried meatloaf. Oh, I found it, Hagrid said with a happy face after groping for a while in the eight-eyed spider's flesh. Then, he asked Qin Yu to put the mouth of the jar towards the poison hole of the acromantula's calicary. Then, as Hagrid stretched his hand into the giant spider's head and slowly exerted force, a light green water line came from the poison. It shot out from the hole position and accurately shot into the jar. Wow, it's out. What a beautiful color, the twin brothers exclaimed with joy. This is not a beautiful color, but a dangerous color, Qin Yu thought to himself tremblingly. He was holding on to the mouth of the jar at this time, really afraid of being splashed by the acromantula's venom. Fortunately, Hagrid's hand was relatively steady, and he didn't spill even a drop of the venom until it was squeezed out. Okay, that's all, Hagrid said as he pulled his hand out of the giant spider's head. The three boys hurried over to see how much venom was squeezed out. Tisk, that's all? George said with some disappointment. Yeah, it's only 2 ounces at most. Fred made a rough estimate. A pint is equal to 20 ounces, which means they have to squeeze 10 spiders to get 1 pint, which is worth 120 galleons. Note, there is an error in the previous article. 1 gallon has been changed to 1 pint. 1 gallon is a bit ridiculously cheap. As for how much a pint is, when converted into metric international units, it is about 568.2612 milliliters. What is the concept? A bottle of Nongfu Spring is 550 milliliters. A pint is a small sip more than this. Advertisement, therefore, our slogan from now on is, we do not produce venom. We only serve as nature's porters, or milkers. Qin Yu started to laugh as he thought about all this. Guys, although one giant spider only has this much, we have a whole cave. Qin Yu pointed at the remaining acrosantula again and said. George and Fred nodded fiercely after hearing this. The silly sons of wealthy landowners were as happy as they were when they saw the great harvest. Then, the three of them started the disgusting work of squeezing out the venom. Qin Yu was the first to try. He had been influenced by movies and TV shows in his previous life and the recent defense against dark arts class, so he was more courageous. Following Hagrid's example, Qin Yu used a sharp knife to cut open the shell of an acromantula's mouthparts, revealing the fleshy part inside the giant spider. Then, he used his hands wearing deerskin gloves to reach in. After groping for a while, he found a soft capsule like a shriveled balloon. Then, Qin Yu asked George and Fred to hold the jar, while he grasped the capsule tightly with his hands. Sure enough, with the force of his hands, the venom was squeezed out smoothly. After the venom of this acromantula was squeezed out, Qin Yu and the other three rushed to the next one. The whole process was disgusting and boring. Of course, they took turns squeezing each other. No matter how strong Qin Yu's psychological quality was, he would vomit if he did too much. In the end, they collected the venom of more than 200 acromantulas of all sizes in the cave, which was about a dozen pints. Looking at the three nearly full jars, Qin Yu, Hagrid, and the twins all had satisfied smiles on their faces. Qin Yu thought to himself that even if he was so sick that he couldn't eat today, it was still worth it. In addition to the venom of the acromantula, various parts of its body are also of great use, such as the spider's eyes, shell, chelicerae, etc. These are all rare monster materials. While Qin Yu and the others were squeezing out the venom, Hagrid used the tools he carried to dismember the acromantulas whose venom glands had been emptied, removed the useful things, and stuffed them all into the sack. The four of them were busy for most of the day, and finally ended their work around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Then, Qin Yu and the others carried the venom jar, and Hagrid carried 2 large sacks, and returned to Hagrid's cabin happily and tiredly. At this time, 2 tall men were standing on the hillside not far away. One of them had a faint smile on his lips, while the other had a cold face and an expressionless face. They were none other than Stephen Swinton and Severus Snape. Professor Snape. It seems that he is having a lot of fun, Swinton said with a raised eyebrow. Professor Swinton. I think he looks like a small businessman in the market, greedy for meager profits. Snape said harshly. Ha ha ha, Professor Snape. There is an old saying in the East that says, a gentleman also likes money, but he will get it in the right way. I think what Qin gained should be his legitimate income, Swinton said with a smile. I just think that a smart kid like him shouldn't waste his energy on these things, Snape said slowly. Wow, this is the first time I heard you praise someone, and this person is still a child, Swinton said with some surprise. Snape half rolled his eyes. He was too lazy to say anything more and walked towards Hagrid's cabin. Where are you going? Swinton shouted from behind. Ask them for some acromantula venom. I will use it in making potions, Snape said without looking back. Oh, I said you said he looks like a businessman. Are you afraid of being ripped off by him? Swinton teased and followed. Just kidding. Why should I be afraid of him? Snape said disdainfully. Chapter 24. Professor Snape, you are our first venom purchaser. We will give you a discount, a pint of 100 gold galleons. Although he said that he was not afraid of Qin Yu, when the child said this and stretched out his hand to him with a smile, Professor Snape still felt a headache. He had not expected this child in advance. He actually reached out for money so skillfully. I'll buy 2 ounces first. Snape took out a small test tube, twitched the corner of his mouth, and said calmly, Severus, if you don't bring so much money, I can lend it to you. Professor Swinton looked at Snape and deliberately interrupted. Professor Swinton, I don't think we are familiar enough to lend each other money. Besides, I only need 1 ounce for my potion research. I bought 2 ounces just for emergencies. Professor Snape, he glanced at this guy and raised his voice. Okay, Professor Snape, I'll get you 2 ounces. Of course, Qin Yu could tell that Mr. Snape didn't have much money with him, but Qin Yu would definitely not expose him. After all, he was his client. Although 2 ounces is a small amount, it is still considered an opening. So, he took the test tube from Snape and asked Hagrid to find a 1-ounce wine picker. However, just when Qin Yu was about to use a wine grape to extract venom for Snape, Snape raised his hand to stop him. Wait a minute, I don't want this jar. I want the jar over there. Snape said this and pointed to the jar of acromantula venom on Qin Yu's right hand. Qin Yu was stunned, then frowned and asked, Professor Snape, is there any difference between these 2 cans? Of course there is a difference. The jar you want to take is obviously the venom of a young acromantula. Its color is green with yellow, but the jar next to it is different. It is pure light green. This is obviously the age of the spider. The venom of the acromantula that has been used for more than 10 years. The toxicity of the two venoms is completely different. Professor Snape pointed at the two cans of venom and said to them, with a tone that was half arrogant and half contemptuous. When George and Fred heard this, they quickly went over to take a look, with blank expressions on their faces, because they didn't think there was any difference between the two bottles of venom. Aren't they both the same color, Shy? Qin Yu only felt that there was a slight difference, and he did not rule out that it was a psychological effect. Not to mention Hagrid, who looked back and forth between the three jars but couldn't see why. Professor Snape, can you really see the difference between them? Qin Yu asked again. Of course, Snape said coldly, showing his impatience with Qin Yu's verbosity. Qin Yu didn't pay attention to Snape's stinky face at all. He thrust the test tube and wine grape into George's hand, walked over excitedly, held Snape's hand and said, "That's great. Professor Snape, your arrival has been a great help to us. It has helped us avoid unnecessary losses." Of course, Qin Yu didn't understand the difference between venoms, but he clearly remembered that when they squeezed the venom from the acromantulas, they selected them from largest to smallest, because the larger acromantulas had larger venom glands. It is easy to find, and then one can is filled with another and then replaced with another empty can, and the venom in the can is inadvertently distinguished. Now that Professor Snape pointed out the difference between venom, and it was confirmed by both facts, Qin Yu certainly believed what he said. When Qin Yu suddenly grabbed his hand, Snape stiffened instinctively. After a moment, he pulled Qin Yu away in disgust and said angrily, "Don't touch me at will. Don't say stupid things. At the end of the day, I didn't do anything." After Qin Yu was pulled away, he was not unhappy at all. Instead, he rubbed his hands and said with a smile, "Professor Snape, do you think this will work? As long as you do us a small favor, your 2 ounces of venom will be given to you for free." Snape was stunned when he heard this and thought to himself, is there such a good thing? Professor Swinton, who came with Snape to watch the fun, looked at the 3 bottles of venom, then at Qin Yu and Snape, with a hint of understanding in his eyes. What Qin Yu asked Snape to do was actually very simple, at least for Professor Snape, a potions teacher. That is to divide the venom into different levels. Qin Yu and the others originally thought that all acromantula venoms were the same, and they could just sell them to the merchants in Diagon Alley. He didn't expect that the venom of the giant spider could be divided into 3, 6, or 9 grades. If Snape hadn't inadvertently reminded them of what Snape said today, they would have lost a lot of money by selling the venom casually. When Snape heard that Qin Yu said that he would give him 2 ounces of venom for free, he was a little unbelievable at first. After hearing Qin Yu's request, he more or less understood his purpose. So, in order to make his labor more valuable, Snape planned to help Qin Yu divide the 3 cans of venom into 4 parts according to their quality. Advertisement 3 divided by 4 is obviously inseparable. But this doesn't bother our great potions teacher, Professor Snape. Qin Yu and the others watched him start performing. Of the original 3 bottles of venom, the one with the best quality was rated S level by Snape, while the worst quality one was rated C level. The middle one was picked out by him alone. Professor Snape pulled out his wand and chanted a spell at the venom jar, and the venom immediately began to spin. After observing for a while, Snape waved his wand at the rotating venom again, and the venom split into 2 halves instantly as if it had been split with a knife. This scene stunned the 3 children, Qin Yu, George, and Fred, and even Hagrid and Professor Swinton looked very interested. "Why are you still standing there? Take some of it away quickly," Snape said angrily to Qin Yu. Qin Yu quickly found a large wine grape and put half of the venom divided into 2 into an empty jar. "Professor Snape, your move is incredible. You are like a contemporary Lu Yu." Qin Yu couldn't help but say, "Lu Yu? Who is Lu Yu?" Snape asked with a frown. Lu Yu was a magician in ancient China. He was good at refining magic medicine using tea." Qin Yu joked. "Oh, tea. It is indeed a good potion ingredient, and I often use it." Snape nodded. In this way, Snape easily divided the 3 cans of venom into 4 levels, S, A, B, and C. Then, for the 2 ounces of labor fee, he helped Qin Yu and the others pack the venom into transparent glass vials. Afterwards, Qin Yu not only fulfilled his promise and gave Snape 2 ounces of S-level venom, but also gave him 1 ounce of each of the 3 levels of ABC venom. Seeing Snape coming out of Hagrid's hut with his still cold face but obvious smile in his eyes, Swinton couldn't help laughing. "Why are you laughing?" Snape said with a frown. "Nothing. I just think that this kid is really smart. He only used a little bit of venom and let you, a genius potion master, do his work for him for an entire afternoon, and he made you so happy." Swinton smiled narrowly, said, "Humph, what do you know? I just did the labor commensurate with my remuneration." Snape said coldly, "As for whether he is happy, he is doing things related to potions, so he is naturally in a good mood. If we sell the goods in the extensive way we originally thought, we will definitely make a lot less money. Now, after Professor Snape's grading, our venom can be priced according to the grade, so that we can sell it at a higher price. At least, our high-level venom will not be sold at cabbage prices," Qin Yu explained to the other 3 partners, and they quickly understood his intention. Then, Qin Yu asked them to fill a dozen vials, each with only a few drops of venom, and then use them as samples to mail them to potential customers in Diagon Alley. After finishing these, it will be dinner time soon. Qin Yu and the Weasley brothers unanimously declined Hagrid's dinner invitation and left Hagrid's cabin as if they were fleeing. However, Qin Yu turned back midway, took away a book about magical animals that Hagrid promised to give him, and then escaped again. Dividing line. Note: the mention of Lu Yu in the article is due to the legend of Lu Yu appreciating water. Zhang Yoxin's Jinsha Shuiji of the Tang dynasty once recorded a story about Lu Yu. It tells that during the reign of Emperor Daizong of the Tang dynasty, Li Jiqing went to Huzhou to be the governor. He met the famous scholar Lu Yu in Yangzhou. Then the two drank tea. Li Jiqing asked his men to go to the Yangtze River, according to Lu Yu's request. Nanling Shui, located in the middle of the river. After his men got it back, Lu Yu immediately saw that there was something wrong with the water. He said that although the water was from the Yangtze River, it was definitely not Nanling water. His men admitted that they had spilled half a bucket of water and mixed half of the bucket on the shore to avoid trouble. Then, after some operations, Lu Yu poured out half a bucket of water and said to everyone, "This is the Nanling water I want." This is the legend of Lu Yu's ability to detect and divert water, and it is very similar to Snape's operation, so the protagonist mentions. Chapter 25. After returning from Hagrid's cabin, Qin Yu went to the auditorium to get some food, and then returned to the Gryffindor dormitory area. He had to take a shower first. He had spent the whole day digging out spider carcasses and dividing up the venom, which made him stink. While taking a shower in the bathroom, he estimated his approximate income this time. In total, they have 5 pints of S-level venom, 3 pints of A-level venom, 3 pints of B-level venom, and 5 pints of C-level venom. If we follow their initial pricing, which is 200 gold galleons per pint for S-level, 150, 120, and 100 gold galleons per pint for A, B, and C levels, then the total revenue should be 2,310 gold galleons. Wow, what a huge sum. Even if it is divided equally among 4 people, one person can still have more than 500 gold galleons. Then, it would definitely be enough to buy him and Hermione and Nimbus 2,000 each. Thinking of this, Qin Yu got a little excited. However, everything has to wait until venom is sold. After taking a shower, Qin Yu ate something and started to read the book he got back from Hagrid. This book is an overview of common magical beasts, which is roughly equivalent to an abbreviated version of Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. It is suitable for introductory reading. The most important thing is that this book is written by Newt Scamander, but the protagonist-level characters are quite powerful, and there are not many copies of this book printed in total, making it a rare collector's edition. Qin Yu glanced at 10 lines and quickly turned to the end. Then, he carefully wrapped the book in brown paper and squeezed it tightly. After writing a letter, he summoned his owl Trig. Then, Qin Yu handed the package and the letter to the owl and asked him to deliver it to Granger's house in a Muggle community in London. As for the content of the letter, it was roughly to encourage little Hermione to study hard and make progress every day, and said that she had a dream recently, and that she had such a dream, and finally said that she got a precious magical animal book from Uncle Hagrid, so that she could spend her free time. You can take a look and learn about these magical creatures in advance. After the letter was sent, Qin Yu lay down and went to sleep. After all, he was recovering from a serious illness, and his energy were still a little lacking. What's more, he didn't have a mobile phone to check his phone, and there was nothing to do if he wanted to stay up late. You can't just gossip with Elvis and Jimmy, right? Qin Yu thought that he didn't have much in common with these little brats, so he might as well go to bed early. Since Qin Yu sent the letter a little late, it was already past 9 o'clock in the evening when the owl knocked on Granger's door. Hermione was overjoyed to receive Qin Yu's letter so quickly. She quickly prepared toast and ham to entertain Trig, the messenger from afar. Then, She hid in the house and opened the letters and packages sent by Qin Yu. This time the letter was very short. There was only one piece of paper, and it was not full. Thinking that she had just received a long letter 2 days ago, Hermione forgave this guy for his perfunctory, especially when she saw him. The letter said that he had dreamed of him. Hermione didn't have any resentment at all, so she almost asked her to fly to that magic school on Trig. Unfortunately, Trig was too small and powerless. The letter should arrive relatively late. There is no need to reply on the same day. Just let Trig stay at home for one night. Qin Yu wrote this at the end of the letter. Therefore, Hermione was not in a hurry to reply to the letter for the time being, but read the book sent by Qin Yu. Of course, since it was too late, I could only briefly look through it. Not long after, her mother urged her to go to bed quickly, so she placed Trig on her windowsill and spread a thin quilt on top to make Trig sleep more comfortably. "Good night, Trig," Hermione said to the owl squatting on the windowsill after getting into her quilt. "Aunt," Trig responded. Hermione smiled sweetly and closed her eyes. She hoped that she could fall asleep quickly. In this case, she might also be able to dream about Qin. Qin said in the letter that if you dream about a person in your dream, then that person will suffer from insomnia. So, will Qin suffer from insomnia because I dream about him? The little girl gradually fell asleep thinking about these endless thoughts. As for whether she dreamed of Qin Yu, only she knew. Regardless of whether Hermione dreamed of Qin Yu or not, Qin Yu was indeed suffering from insomnia. To be precise, he got up a little early. Because he went to bed early last night, he woke up at 4 o'clock today, and after waking up, he couldn't fall back to sleep. Then, he walked out of the Gryffindor lounge area and wandered around the school. Not to mention, Hogwarts is really quiet at this time, with a different feeling, as if everything is sleeping, waiting to wake up at dawn. Walking there, Qin Yu seemed to be getting acquainted with this mysterious magic school again, and unknowingly, stepping on the moving stairs under his feet, Qin Yu reached the 8th floor of the main building of Hogwarts Castle. "Why did you come here suddenly?" Qin Yu said to himself in astonishment. However, after arriving, he decided to take a brief stroll here. After all, he had never been to this place before, so he just treated it as an exploration map. This place is very similar to other places in Hogwarts, with large corridors and distinctive hanging paintings. Qin Yu stopped at a painting to admire it for a moment and said hello to the characters in the painting. The other party obviously didn't wake up. After raising his eyelids, he yawned and continued to sleep. However, just when Qin Yu was about to leave, the wall next to him suddenly changed. A tall and simple door gradually appeared on the originally smooth wall. After seeing this scene, Qin Yu subconsciously rubbed his eyes. After making sure that he was not dazzled because he got up too early, he smiled happily. Yes, he remembered the system choices and rewards he made before he fell into coma in the Acromantula cave. The right to summon the Room of Requirement. And this room that suddenly appeared should be the legendary Room of Requirement. Sure enough, the early bird catches the worm. Qin Yu couldn't help but sigh, although it was not very appropriate. Then, he opened the door and entered the Room of Requirement. At this time, the Room of Requirement seemed a little empty, not like there were so many things in the movie. However, Qin Yu then thought about it. This room was changed according to the needs of the person who entered it, and his needs were obviously different from Harry Potter's. As for why it was an empty room, Qin Yu secretly guessed, could it be for me to use it as a warehouse to store things? Advertisement after all, in his planned business, there will be a large number of magical animal accessories that need to be stored, so this place is really suitable. Although the appearance of this room was full of mystery, there was not much strangeness here at this time. Qin Yu walked around and got a general understanding of the layout before leaving. Of course, he will definitely pay attention to this place, and it may come in handy in the future. The two Gryffindor brothers, George and Fred, have always been the troublemakers and the top scorers in their grade. This caused headaches for many people, especially Professor Snape. Every time he saw them, he seemed to be watching. In the shadow of the former enemies, they are ready to throw a shadowless curse to chop off their heads at any time. However, these two people seem to have suddenly changed their temper recently. It is difficult to see them in school at other times except for classes, meals, and sleeping. This makes the teachers and students a little uncomfortable, and many people are uncomfortable. There is speculation that the two brothers may be harboring a big bad idea, and there is quite a market for this speculation. If brothers George and Fred knew what these people were thinking, they probably wouldn't care. After all, how can someone who dares to play pranks on various occasions in school have the dignity to do so? Today, George and Fred also did not stay at the school for long. After breakfast, they hurriedly left Hogwarts Castle. and the place they are going to is Hagrid's cabin. I didn't expect Uncle Hagrid to be quite knowledgeable. I didn't realize it before. George couldn't help but said to his brother. Just like Qin said, if 3 people walk together, someone will be our teacher. What he said is absolutely right. Fred continued. This is not what Qin said. He said it. It is what an Eastern wise man said. However, it does make sense. We should be more humble in the future and learn more from capable people. George corrected Fred and made a summary. Yes, only by learning with an open mind can we continue to grow and become people who can shoulder the burden of business. Fred nodded in agreement. As a result, the 2 brothers instantly felt that their character had been sublimated, and they had become people of noble moral character. However, a few minutes later, when they saw a little golden unicorn rubbing against Qin Yu's body like a pet dog, their spirits exploded. Hagrid, what the hell is going on? Why would a proud unicorn do such a thing? The 2 brothers asked Hagrid either in pain or envy. Oh, Qin came to see me early this morning, and then the little unicorn came out of the Forbidden Forest. After seeing Qin, she became very close to him. Hagrid briefly told what happened. Why? I'm not sisterly. Neither do I. Sisterly. The accents of both men's voices changed. If you want to talk about the reason, it's probably because Qin saved her when she was in the most danger. She developed a feeling of gratitude or dependence on Qin. You know, unicorns are very spiritual creatures. Hagrid tried to explain to the Weasley brothers. When George and Fred heard this, they both sighed. They really couldn't do what Hagrid said. However, they soon regained their mood and moved closer together. Anna, we are Qin's good friends. Nice to meet you. George said to the little unicorn. Yes, we are Qin's friends, and you are Qin's friend, then we are good friends. Fred also said to the little unicorn. Seeing the little unicorn's curious expression, George and Fred tentatively stretched out their hands. However, as soon as their hands came closer, Anna poked them with her horn in dissatisfaction, obviously not wanting them to touch her. George and Fred both looked disappointed. However, Anna still accepted all the clean radishes they handed over. Gee, Kelly and Unicorn are indeed a mother and daughter. Okay, Anna, you should go back, otherwise your mother will worry about you. Qin Yu patted the little unicorn's head and said. Hearing this, the little unicorn purred, rubbed its neck against Qin Yu again, and then reluctantly left the small square near Hagrid's hut and walked into the Forbidden Forest. She is so beautiful. I really look forward to seeing her lose her golden color and turn into a snow-white adult unicorn. George and Fred sighed. Qin Yu was too lazy to pay attention to these 2 nymphomaniacs, but turned to Hagrid and asked, Hagrid, did the owl reply? After Qin Yu explored the room of requirement early in the morning, he had breakfast and then came to the Hagrid hut. However, as soon as he arrived here, he was pestered and played with by the enthusiastic little unicorn. Of course, who can refuse it? What about the enthusiasm of a golden unicorn as big as a pony? Qin Yu narrowly missed taking the little unicorn back to Gryffindor's dormitory to feed him, but his reason told him that the Forbidden Forest was Anna's paradise. After sending Anna away, he remembered the important purpose of coming to Hagrid, which was to understand customer feedback. Yes, those who received the venom samples basically wrote back. I took a look at it and found that they were all satisfied with the quality of the venom, but they all said that our price was a bit high, Hagrid said. George and Fred also listened carefully to Hagrid's words at this time. Since they are satisfied with the items, then lower the price by 10%. Qin Yu thought for a while and said, Is it lowered so much all at once? George frowned and said, Then we will have to sell more than 200 gold galleons less. Fred settled the calculation in an instant. More than 200. Hagrid was a little surprised by this number. After listening to what the 3 of them said, Qin Yu couldn't help but smile and said, Who said we have to sell them all at a 10% price reduction? Then what are you going to do? Fred asked curiously. George and Hagrid also cast inquiring glances. Hunger marketing. Qin Yu said a term. Without waiting for the 3 people to ask questions, he continued, Our reduced price venom is in limited supply. The total purchase limit of all grades of venom for each customer is 10 ounces. If there is more, we will not sell it. Why not sell it? It's useless for us to keep it. No one in this school buys this thing except Severus, Hagrid said anxiously. I'm just saying, don't sell now. It doesn't mean you won't sell in the future. Remember, as a qualified businessman, you must learn to control the market instead of being controlled by the market. As for how to control the market, you 2 can try to think about it. Qin Yu said this to George and Fred. As for Uncle Hagrid, He didn't force him. When the twin brothers heard this, they all showed thoughtful expressions. Leaving the two of them there to think about this problem, Qin Yu asked Hagrid to find pen and paper. He wrote replies to the interested customers one by one about price reductions, and asked them to quote a purchase quantity after making a decision so that they could arrange delivery. Goods. It's quite troublesome. Hagrid sighed with emotion. When doing business, you always have to bargain, so that both the buyer and the seller can have a satisfactory result, Qin Yu said to Uncle Hagrid with a smile. Hearing this, Hagrid nodded thoughtfully, not knowing whether he understood the meaning of Qin Yu's words. After finishing this, the four of them were not idle. Instead, under Qin Yu's suggestion, they cleaned, sorted, and classified the various parts of the acromantula that Hagrid dismembered yesterday. These things are all money, and it is impossible to let them pile up and take up space in the warehouse. Qin Yu planned to take it with him when Hagrid delivers the goods and sell as much as he can.
Thanks for watching. You can find the next videos in the playlist linked in the info card, directly on my channel, or right here on the screen. And as always, if you have any feedback, feel free to share it in the comments too.